Okay.
Can we please have a roll call? Is there an
Yes.
echo?
Commissioner Don, could you please say your last name for me?
Why are we?
Jinsky, thank you. Commissioner Watson,
What's all this echo?
Commissioner Burke,
Here.
Commissioner Carapiet, Chair Carapiet,
Here?
Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Botros, Commissioner Seidel.
Here.
Thank you.
Somebody's microphone is on. On my computer. Wow.
Moving on to agenda item B, open forum. This is an opportunity for any citizen to briefly address the Planning Commission on any matters appearing on this agenda that are not agendized for discussion. Upon being recognized by the chair, please state your name and limit your oral statement to no more than 3 minutes. Matters that appear to warrant a more lengthy presentation or commission consideration will be agendized for further discussion at a later meeting. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak? Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom? I can't. Is it better? Is it better? Okay. So you said none, right, Nancy, on Zoom? Oh, that's okay. So, is there anyone on Zoom that wants to speak at the open forum? Thank you. Moving on to reports. Do any planning commissioners have a report? Seeing none. Is there a staff report?
I'll do a quick update on the housing element. We are working, and you'll see on our agenda, we're looking to appoint an ad hoc subcommittee for the housing element update. We are working diligently on revisions to our housing element update. We are hopeful to have the ad hoc committee and appoint that tonight, as well as having a hearing sometime in September with that ad hoc committee to make a recommendation to the city council for the October hearing. It will be a public meeting, open to the public, to gather comments from the public as well.
Thank you. Moving on to item D, the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of items that the Planning Commission considers to be non-controversial. Unless any item is specifically removed by any member of the Planning Commission, staff, or audience, the consent calendar will be adopted by one motion. Items removed will be considered in the sequence as they appear below. If any member of the audience wishes to have an item removed, please come to the podium or follow the remote meeting procedures. If you do not have, not on Zoom, they're not here. The consent calendar this month consists of the draft minutes from the June 18th meeting and extension of design review for 28 Eucalyptus. Can I have a motion for does anyone wish to remove an item? Commissioners? Anyone on Zoom, Nancy? Thank you. May I have a motion, please?
I move to adopt the consent calendar items 1 and 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to note that the other new commissioners and I were not present for the last meeting, so we can't approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay. So the 3 new commissioners.
Can I just make a suggestion to please use the microphones, because the people on Zoom cannot hear unless you guys are speaking into the microphones.
Sorry.
Thank
I
you.
just noted that myself and the other 2 new commissioners were not present for the last meeting, so therefore we can't consent to the minutes from the last meeting.
I would also be recused from the June meeting. the June minutes.
You actually can do so, assuming that you've reviewed them and are comfortable with their contents, but you're not required to do so if you're not comfortable with it.
We don't have a quorum if we don't have one of them do it.
One of you, assuming that you've read the minutes, should step forward and vote to approve them. Otherwise, we should postpone them until the next meeting.
I was in fact here as an observer, so I'm happy to approve.
Okay, so it's 4. Thank you. Item number 3. Tonight, we're going to elect our new commission chair and vice chair, and the change will be effective as of September. And can I have a nomination for chair, please?
I would like to nominate current Vice Chair Johnson, who has done an extraordinary job in that role as the new chair.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And can I have a nomination for the vice chair?
Yes, I would love the honors. Thank you, Kevin. I would like to nominate Kevin Burke to be vice chair.
And can I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, congratulations. Oh, number 4 is
Can
we
I
have,
just add a quick
Sure.
something? I just want to say thank you to Pat for chairing over the last year. It's been an interesting year. And you've done just an incredible amount of work. Most of it is unseen by the community. And I just want to acknowledge you and say thank you because you have an incredible just attention to detail and a very high standard. And there are big shoes to fill. So thank you.
thank you for the kind words. Appreciate it. So our next item is the Assistant City Attorney presentation regarding the California Open Meeting Law, known as the Brown Act.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. If you'll wait one moment, there was a PowerPoint coming up. The city manager asked me to provide a brief presentation, given the newness of some of the members here, and to give you all a chance to ask questions and discuss. Are we about? Oh, good. Okay. If you could skip down, actually, just go ahead and skip down 2 slides. Here are the, okay. Why do we have the Brown Act? The Brown Act was adopted in order to make sure that public business is conducted in public for the benefit of the public with the participation of the public. And that being your lodestar will help you understand a lot of the basic provisions of it. The public has to know about what's coming up, be able to participate in it, and be present. Next slide, please. The Brown Act applies to legislative bodies. And what is that? First and foremost, it is the governing body of any local public agency or other agency created by state law. That means cities, counties, school districts, et cetera, governing body, city council, board of supervisors, board of trustees, and similar. Just FYI, for those of you who have, perhaps aspirations to elected office, once you are elected to a governing body, you are considered a member of that body for purposes of the act. And so you have to start being careful right away in having conversations about the business of the public agency. Next slide. Legislative bodies can make other legislative bodies. Any standing committee is a legislative body. A committee or commission that is formed by official action can be a legislative body. A committee established by official action to have standing jurisdiction over a particular subject matter, again, like the Planning Commission, is considered a legislative body for purposes of the Act. So all of those different entities are subject to the Brown Act's notice and public meeting requirements. Next slide, please. So are there anything that is not a legislative body? Well, you can, when I say you, a legislative body can form a non-legislative body if it keeps a couple of principles in mind. First, it has to be composed solely of the members of that body. So if the Planning Commission, as it is agendized tonight, forms a committee, that's not going to be subject to the Brown Act. It has to be composed solely of members of the Planning Commission. And 2, it has to be composed of less than a quorum, or less than a majority, as we might say, of the Planning Commission. For the purposes of the Planning Commission, the Muni Code establishes 4 as a quorum, so that's the number to keep in mind. One other side note, the committees that qualify for this are commonly known as ad hoc committees. They are by their nature temporary and formed to handle short-term problems, or relatively short-term problems. Sometimes the projects will go on for quite a while, but they're not permanent topics like the budget might be, or land use decisions might be. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, what's a meeting? Majority of the members of the legislative body or one of its standing committees, whenever that majority discusses or takes action on any matter within their jurisdiction, that is considered a meeting and subject to the Brown Act. So unless you have complied with the Brown Act or are within one of the very narrow exceptions to the act, that is what should set off red lights as to when you might be in danger of violation. Next slide. It can be formal or informal. You could run into each other at a coffee shop and accidentally violate the act. Planned, unplanned, it could be only discussion, it could be just giving advice. All of these matters could violate the act if it happens between a majority or more, and it's a communication about matters that are within their subject matter jurisdiction. Next slide. Unlawful meetings can be any kind of communication or series of communications that results in a sharing of views between a majority. A brief chat before a meeting, after a meeting, or a series of conversations that result in more than a majority hearing, interchanging opinions, statements, etc., about the subject matter jurisdiction. So, for example, A talks to B, says what A tells B what they think. B talks to C, B tells C what they think. C then talks to D and mentions what A told them and what B told them. There you have a violation right there. They can be simultaneous, but they don't have to be. It can be a conversation by phone or a conversation by a series of emails. Technology has made it more difficult to avoid violations of the act. You have to be careful in sending emails or using social media to make sure that you don't have an exchange of views that involves more than a majority or more. So even just posting on a Facebook page, or, you know, I guess it would be Snapchat if you're more modern than I am, that can be an inadvertent violation of the act. Next slide. Okay, there's just a few exceptions. If it's a regional, state, or national conference that you all happen to be attending, that's okay. A local meeting that is open to the public, and when I say open to the public, I mean you're not charging attendance or you're not limiting attendance, that's okay. Or a social, recreational, ceremonial event that's not sponsored or paid for by the body, that's fine too. The caveat to all of these is that a majority or more of the commissioners cannot gather together and talk about relevant matter to the commission's business, even if it's inadvertent and casual. Once you see more than 3 people gathered in a corner, you should stop talking about anything having to do with the business of the commission. Next slide, please. You can communicate with the public on social media. You should not talk to each other on social media. And when I say talk to each other, I mean even a thumbs up, if there are enough of you doing it, could be considered a violation. Any comments exchanged between each other could be considered a violation. I would tend to discourage using social media altogether on anything relating to the business of the Planning Commission. It's very likely to get you into trouble. Next. 3 types of meetings. The only 2 that the Planning Commission is likely to have to worry about are regular and special. The regular are the meetings that are scheduled per the, I believe it's set in the Administrative Procedures Manual. You can call a special meeting on 24 hours notice if you feel the need to do so, and that has happened sometimes in consideration of the housing element most recently. And that only, again, requires 24 hours notice. Next slide. Remote participation is an issue that has become more pressing since COVID. They loosened the rules for this in the heart of the pandemic, but those rules have changed yet again. So here are the three instances where you can't do it. One is the old style way that you did it, where you would have to note on the agenda that's posted for the meeting that X member plans to attend remotely. And that person who's attending remotely would have to be in a place that's publicly accessible and post an agenda of that meeting outside the door or the hotel room or whatever it is. And if they do those things, they can attend remotely. You have a couple of times a year when you could attend remotely for just cause, and a couple of times a year where you can attend remotely in the case of an emergency, provided the legislative body approves that attendance. So I would use those numbers 2 and 3 there sparingly because they are limited. I should also note that in all of these cases, a majority of the commission has to be present within the jurisdiction. Next slide. Agendas. As I mentioned before, 72 hours for regular meetings, 24 for special meetings. That's the key thing here, is that the agenda gets posted and mailed to anyone who's requested it the appropriate time before the meeting. You don't have to get the staff reports out that far in advance, although it's generally considered a good idea because it gives the commission and the public a chance to read the stuff, but that's not required. All that's required is that the agenda describe every item that the Planning Commission plans to discuss and or take action on in the course of the meeting. And the description doesn't have to be long or detailed, but it has to alert a person of ordinary intelligence and education enough information about the item so that they will know if it's something they're interested in and whether they should seek more information or come to the meeting. A body subject to the Brown Act, as the Planning Commission is, cannot discuss or act on matters that are not on the agenda. Now, it does sometimes happen that someone will come to the podium during public forum and ask a question. And a brief reply as to, like, along the lines of, why don't you talk to the staff about that? That's fine. But going much further than that is discouraged. And I would suggest that if you want to discuss it, that item, that matter, you direct staff to put it on a future agenda. Next slide. The public. That's a terrible picture. No, that I don't know. I should have. Types of public comments. In every meeting, you have to allow the public to comment before every item, before you take action, or before a discussion is concluded. In every regular meeting, you must also allow general public comment on any matter that is within the legislative body's jurisdiction and that is not on the agenda for the evening. You don't have to let them come up and talk early about something that you're already agendized to talk about later on. But if it's within your jurisdiction and it's not agendized, it's fair game for the public forum. The speaker can criticize the policy, the entity, the board, staff, but they can also be required to follow content neutral procedural rules. You have to treat all speakers equally. That may go without saying, but I want to emphasize it anyway. If everybody gets 3 minutes, great. You can't give some people 3 minutes just because you think that they have more to say. There has to be a content neutral reason. Next slide. Generally speaking, people get up to 3 minutes. You can make that longer or shorter, but everybody has to be treated the same. They do not have a right to have a response from the legislative body or staff. And I would encourage you to refer a question to staff if they're asking you to tell them something, unless you're pretty sure you know the answer. They should take it up with staff later, or you can ask staff to get in touch with them. There is such a thing called closed sessions. I'm not going to spend any time hardly on them at all because they really don't apply to the Planning Commission. There are very narrow exceptions to the Brown Act that allow for a legislative body to meet in outside of the public eye, but those apply to things that are outside of your jurisdiction, such as litigation, labor, real estate negotiations, that kind of thing. Next slide. There are penalties if you violate the Brown Act. In my practical experience, the worst penalty is typically embarrassment, but there can be a lawsuit where if the person is victorious, they get attorney's fees. You could have a court order ordering you to redo whatever it was that you did when you violated the act. There can even be civil and criminal penalties. Although I will tell you that that almost never happens unless you're really incorrigible about violating the act, which I know this commission would never be. So that's the basics, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Just Kevin?
So the vast majority of the world has moved to a hybrid approach to engagements like this. Well, maybe not in government. And so my question to you is government open to that? Is that something that we hear being discussed, or is there a potential that, they would move in that direction?
So hybrid can mean one of two different things in my experience. One is the public gets the choice to attend either remotely or in person. That's what we're doing tonight.
Right.
That's very common. The Brown Act does not forbid that. The Brown Act does regulate how the members of the body attend. And there have been various attempts in the legislature to loosen those rules to something closer to what we had during COVID. And so far, it hasn't made it out of committee as far as I'm aware. They have not gotten close. There's always somebody who says it's unfair for some reason if the members aren't generally appearing in person. I can't defend that outcome, but that's what it is.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience on our tutorial? Seeing none. Thank you, Anne, for clarifying all those important rules for the commission. Next is appointing a ad hoc committee of the Planning Commission to consider public comments and make recommendations to the City Council regarding revisions to the housing element, update and next steps in the process. So the ad hoc committee will consist of Kevin Burke, Ashley Johnson, Alex Idle, and myself. No.
I'm sorry, but an ad hoc committee has to be less than a majority. So it would have to be 3 or less.
Oh, well, I thought that's why we were doing the Brown Act.
Yeah, I thought we wanted that. That's what it is.
Oh, okay. If you want it to
No,
be,
we wanted to
all right.
have it.
It's a
Then it's
Brown-
not an ad hoc committee. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It would be a formal committee.
All right, we're going
Yeah.
to change the ad hoc committee to a formal committee. And those 4 commissioners will serve on the committee, and it will be noticed in a public meeting through the normal ways by signing up on the city website in the ARC and posted outside City Hall for the date and time of that meeting in September. Are there any comments from the audience? Are there any comments on Zoom, Nancy? Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to our public hearing. Item number 6, 322 San Rafael Avenue. Can we please have a staff report?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Carapiet and members of the Planning Commission. For your consideration this evening is an application for design review, demolition, and revocable license to construct a new single-family residence and detached garage at 322 San Rafael Avenue. The site contains a single-story residence and attached 2-car garage on a relatively flat 26,000 square foot lot in the R1L zoning district. The site abuts single-family residences to the north, south, and west, and Belvedere Lagoon to the east. The site is accessible via San Rafael Avenue. The project proposes to demolish the existing 5,450 square foot residence and dock and construct a new 5,450 square foot residence. The home is proposed in an L shape with a courtyard and walkway positioned along the center of the property. The residence is primarily single story and proposes a second story on the right side. The residence will be set back 5 feet from both side yards, 15 feet from the rear, and 6 foot 2 inches from the front yard. The second story would be 10 feet from the right side property line. Additionally, the project proposes to install a new 85-foot-long wood plank dock and bulkhead and a new 25-meter lap pool. The project proposes a 732 square foot garage, 4,242 square foot living area at the first story, and a 476 square foot second story office. The project site is in the AE flood zone, where projects of substantial improvement must have an elevated finished floor to meet FEMA regulations and the city's floodplain management ordinance. Here, the home's finished floor will be raised approximately 1 to 4 feet to meet base flood elevation requirements. From the existing grade, the project proposes a 25-foot, 11-inch tall second story, 20-foot tall, 9-inch living room, a 15-foot tall bedroom, and 12-foot, 4-inch tall garage. Looking at the proposed residence from Belvedere Lagoon, the project proposes a series of floor-to-ceiling glass windows and doors. The project proposes a 26-foot wide by 14-foot, 10-inch tall glass door at the living room, a 14-foot wide by 10-foot tall glass door, and a 7-foot wide by 10-foot tall window at the first story. At the second story, the project proposes a 13-foot wide by 9-foot tall glass door and window. Viewed from the right side, the project proposes one window on the right side elevation. No windows are proposed on the second story elevations. However, the building wall facing Leeward Road, approximately 65 feet from the right side property line, proposes one window measuring 17 feet 4 inches wide by 14 feet 10 inches tall at the living room. Viewing the home from the left side, the project proposes glass windows and doors at the bedrooms and a 17-foot wide by 14-foot 10-inch tall window at the kitchen. Viewed from the front, the project proposes a 7-foot wide by 14-foot 9-inch tall wood entry gate and 18-foot by 8-foot tall garage door. The front elevation of the second story, which sits approximately 100 feet from the front property line, proposes 3 windows measuring 20 feet 4 inches in width and at 9 feet tall. The architects have provided an updated colors and material board in response to some neighbor concerns. The project proposes flat roofs with travertine stone fascia, stained wood siding at the garage and entry gates, split stone veneer and travertine stone on the exterior walls, and darkened aluminum windows and doors. The project proposes an assortment of exterior lights throughout the property, including wall sconces at the garage, entry, and bedrooms, path lights throughout the courtyard, recessed can lights at the living room overhang, step lights leading to the dock, and pool lights. Circled in red, the project proposes to remove 15 trees from the site, including a 28-inch in diameter cedar at the front of the property. 3 magnolias along the lagoon are also proposed for removal. The project proposes to plant an assortment of trees, shrubs, and perennials. At the front of the property, the project would include 3 oak trees in 48-inch boxes. At the left side courtyard, the project would plant 1 Japanese cherry tree in a 36-inch box and 3 Japanese maples. And in the central courtyard, the project proposes 5 olive trees. At the rear, the project proposes 8 silk tassel bush, 3 strawberry trees, 15 little ollies, 5 flowering currants, and 6 coffee berry. And in the central courtyard, the project proposes 3 western redbuds, manzanita, and 1 Japanese maple. Additionally, the project would include Indian laurel in 24-inch boxes along both side yards, listed to grow between 15 and 20 feet tall. The project requests a revocable license for private improvements within the San Rafael Avenue right-of-way. These improvements include a new sidewalk, driveway, walkway, and landscaping. Revocable licenses may be granted by City Council when there is some benefit to the public, provided that the proposed encroachments comply with the design review requirements. In 1986, the owners received planning approval to construct the current 5,450 square foot residence. Here, the applicant proposes to match the home's existing floor area using a section of the Belvedere Municipal Code, which allows parcels in the R1L zoning district to have floor area equal to that of the existing residence, provided that certain conditions are met. In order to grant the floor area exception, a licensed surveyor shall calculate and verify the total floor area of the existing structure. New construction shall conform to all zoning standards for setbacks, heights, and lot coverage. The calculated volume in cubic feet of the new structures shall be equivalent to or less than the calculated volume of the existing structures. And the new structure shall not materially impair primary views or privacy of adjacent properties and views from the street to a greater extent than the impairment by the existing structure. Here, the new structures will conform to all applicable zoning standards. The applicants have provided a letter from a licensed surveyor verifying the floor area of the existing structures. As proposed, the structures will not impair primary views of adjacent properties, which are generally views of Mount Tamalpais, the San Francisco Bay, bridges, and the surrounding hills of Tiburon or Belvedere Island, as seen from inside the public or common areas of a home. Views from adjacent neighbors will not be impaired as the second story does not have windows or doors facing the neighbor. The second story does not propose windows facing San Rafael. The second story does propose windows facing San Rafael Avenue that have the potential to impede on the neighbor's privacy, but existing and proposed landscaping appear to sufficiently screen the proposed windows. Privacy of the left side neighbor will not be impaired by the living room window, as it will be screened by new plantings as well. However, staff has not received a volumetric calculation of the existing and proposed structures. Staff was informed that after a preliminary study, the proposed structures would have a greater volume than that of the existing structures. Without a volumetric comparison, the applicant would like the Planning Commission to discuss and provide feedback on the proposed project. The applicant intends to reduce the volume of the project so that it will comply with this section of the municipal code and provide that information to the commissioners at the September hearing. Staff has received letters and emails opposing the project plans from neighbors at the following addresses. The letters and email correspondence are in your packets or have been emailed to you. Neighbors are concerned about the impacts to privacy, mass and bulk of the structures, and cedar tree removal. The project is exempt from CEQA. And without receiving the volumetric calculation of the existing and proposed structure, staff is unable to recommend approval of the project as currently presented. Staff recommends the Planning Commission review the plans and project material, hear from the applicant and members of the public, and provide feedback to the applicant regarding the design for a future submittal. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Do any commissioners have questions for staff? Ashley?
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned that the color, the exterior color had been adjusted, and I'm just curious if we have samples of what it was and what it is now. There was some neighbor concern about the shade being very light and reflective.
Can you speak into your mic? No one can hear you. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
A little closer.
Okay, hang on.
Is
Okay,
it on?
there we go.
Thank you.
I'm just asking about the exterior color. Do we have a sample? Is it possible to actually look at the stone?
A physical.
And has it been darkened?
We don't have the actual samples, but I think the slide Sammy showed is the revised colors.
So it's different than what we got last week.
Yes,
So it is darker.
it's actually on the dais for you too.
And then just while I'm looking at this, the roof material looks it looks almost white to me. Is that right? It's a white roof?
I don't know. I'm hopeful that the architect can answer that question, unless Sammy knows.
Fascia is that stone veneer. The fascia is the stone veneer that became darker. The actual on top of the roof, I'm not sure what the material
I'm
is.
just
on top.
looking at the picture in here and the picture looks white. And I think it's against our code. I think it has to be a dark color. The roof has to be a dark color, right?
So why don't we clarify that with the
Yeah.
with
Okay,
the
okay,
architect
okay.
when we get to him?
Okay. And then could you also just clarify the height of the fence in the front? I think you mentioned it and I missed it, but that the whole kind of front perimeter fence.
Mhm. That would have been 14 foot 9 inch tall.
Okay, so that would require a variance because the limit is 6 feet, right?
This is 6 feet back from the property line, so it's allowed in that area. It's not on the property line. It's approximately 6 feet 2 inches back.
Not subject to the standards of a property line fence. It can be considered a building wall.
So it's on the same plane as the garage,
Right.
which is 6 something setback.
So it's 1 foot behind the
So it's
setback.
one,
So it
Okay,
meets
1
it's
those
6
foot
feet from
plus.
the
setback
property line. So it
requirements,
doesn't
yeah.
count as a fence, even though it is a front fence.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Kevin?
Could you, I want to go back to what's in the municipal code 1952-090B, which is what we're referring or using as an exemption to the total square footage. And the fourth point there talks about the new structure shall not materially impair the primary views or privacy of adjacent properties or views from the street to a greater extent than the impairment created by the existing conforming or non-conforming structure. The primary view, you say it's been defined by the general plan or it's suggested? I mean, define.
The general plan says generally defined as.
Generally defined as. So, I mean, it isn't specific in that regard. I guess maybe I would ask Anne, I mean, so is that a general guidance or is that specific? So for instance, there are concerns about this property or the current plan blocking views of the lagoon, which one might argue that is, if it's looking out your window, that might be the primary view that you have. And it's obviously an iconic element of Belvedere or the hills of Tiburon. Those aren't necessarily cited, I don't think, in the general plan suggested guidelines, but I think one could argue those are primary or could be primary depending on the person's residence and what their view experience is.
I think in the absence of specific criteria determining what is primary and what is materially impaired mean, it's left for the planning commission in the first instance to
To determine.
interpret those phrases
Great,
as
thank
best
you.
you can.
Thank you. That's very helpful. The second question is, so there's a tree that, I mean, as a rule, the city really doesn't like to remove, established trees of significance. So the cedar tree would certainly fall within that category. And if it was just the tree, it would need to come for design review just alone. It's part of this application. And so if we were to condition the approval of this application, not that we're going to do that tonight, but if we were to condition it as the tree must remain as conditioned to the approval of this application, what would happen when the ADU is submitted ministerially?
That is a very interesting question, and it's not one to which there is a clear, indubitable answer. You can require them as a condition of this approval to leave the tree or to get the appropriate permit to remove the tree. But then, as you say, the ADU permit process can be ministerial. If they apply for a building permit that complies with the standards for a ministerial approval of building permit, then we're required by state law to issue that building permit. But the building permit by itself doesn't necessarily authorize the removal of any trees. So you could take the position, again, there's very little case law, there's no case law on this. You could take the position that they have a building permit, but it would still violate the municipal code to remove the tree without a tree removal permit. And I think it's a good thing that you've raised this now before they lock themselves into a design that might necessitate tree removal in order to build the desired ADU.
Right, which, I mean, obviously we can't opine on the ADU here, but the tree is part of the application. And I just wanted, so it sounds like the decision could stand, or there's nothing to suggest in the state law that the decision would be overruled without,
It would be
It's
this
gray.
particular decision, yes. The question is the decision later
right?
with respect to the ADU. You will never see the application for a building
Correct.
permit for the ADU. The question would arise if we were to try to do code enforcement for the removal of the tree, by which time, of course, the tree is removed. What would a court do with that? It's difficult to say. I don't think, I think there's a strong argument that they would still need a tree removal permit. But if I were the applicant, I would want to avoid what is a really pretty messy question by simply arranging their design so that they can have an ADU that doesn't require removal of the tree, or by getting a tree removal permit before they actually construct the main residence.
Got it.
So I have a follow-up question to Kevin's question. So hypothetically, not this project, just any project. My house, I have a big maple tree in my front of my house, and I want to put an ADU there. And let's say it fits the 5-foot setback and everything for the lagoon. And if I came in and I met all the requirements, what would staff do with that tree?
Well, again, that gets to the heart of the uncertainty of this statute. There's a lot still that is not known about the legal ramifications of the ADU statutes. So again, you can pull a building permit for the construction of the ADU, but that doesn't necessarily give you the right to remove the tree, which means you have a building permit that you can't exercise without violating municipal code.
Okay.
It puts the applicant in a rather difficult situation. It puts the city in a difficult situation too.
I think also just to add, if that was the case, we would that they apply for design review to remove the tree while they have their building permit. So in this case, if the tree stays with this design review application, correct me if I'm wrong, Ann, and it's conditioned that the cedar tree stays. However, if they come in at a later date, they still can apply for design review to remove that tree.
Sure, go ahead.
And then this is maybe not more as much a question, but more helpful to the community, because I know there were questions around this, is just to confirm that the municipal code that we're talking about, 1952-090B, how does that relate to or supersede the limitations of what you can build in a lot of this size? So typically new builds would it be 4,000 square feet, or would this particular lot still?
So there is a limited exception established by 090B. And if you come within the fairly narrow parameters of that exception, then you are not subject to the FAR limits that would otherwise apply. So the 4,000 would not apply if they are within the square footage of the legal non-conforming and can prove that they're also within the volume and the other two components of that section. The issue just wouldn't arise.
Got it. And so one could then conclude that if it doesn't meet the 4 criteria, then it wouldn't be exempt and it would need to stay within the limit of
It would
FAR,
either need to stay within the limit
or seek a variance.
or get an exception in this case.
Got it. Okay, thanks. That's very helpful.
Sorry. I just want to ask a follow-up question to that. The calculations of the floor area and the volume, do those include the proposed JADU and the ADU as well? Because that would be new construction.
No, JADUs and ADUs are processed completely differently.
No, I understand the process completely differently, but in reading what the code says is it says that the calculated volume of the new structures shall be equivalent to or less. The new structure shall not materially impair, et cetera.
So if it's an ADU, then the ADU clearly does not count towards the FAR. So the excess square footage would not count. The JADU, it would depend on how the applicant proceeds. Right now, there's no JADU contemplated by this. I would actually.
Yeah, there is.
Is there? Oh, I did not know that. Okay, I apologize. Then it probably still would not count. I'd have to look that up, but I don't think it would. I can get back to you later on that.
So don't you think state law trumps our laws from 1986 where we don't count ADU and JADUs on square footage or lot coverage?
Well, are you talking about the 1989 FAR requirements that were put in? Or
Was it 89
that's what I've been told?
in 2006?
Uh, What's that?
5?
Okay.
The 2006 ordinance put this section in that we're looking at our
Okay.
screen, the exemption from floor area. They sort of quote unquote in the ordinance and staff report called it grandfathering in your existing floor area. We chose not, in 2006, chose not to use the word grandfather. We're saying you're exempt from any floor area requirements, provided you meet these 4 bullet points. So state law, yes, now would trump our 2006
Oh,
ordinance.
Always, but in this case, I don't see a conflict, honestly. Because state law says essentially that you don't count ADUs, and I believe JADUs, towards any kind of floor area restrictions. They're perfectly compatible.
I agree. Yeah, it's, you'll find state law trumps a lot. The only thing that trumps state is feds. That's why we get 4-foot sidewalks.
So just one follow-up from a noob here, and forgive my not knowing this, but point 4 under 90B, circling back to the discussion about what constitutes primary view, what's kind of the working thinking around what impairs privacy?
So there are, over in Tiburon, they have, privacy is different than view. And there's a lot fewer guidelines out there about privacy. So that is something that is, you want to be consistent in how you interpret these phrases, but you do have discretion in how you interpret them. In terms of view preservation, in some jurisdictions, they have guidelines as to what rooms are primary and which are not, and what is substantially impaired means. We don't have those. Oh, we do? I'm sorry, where are they? Are they in the?
They're in the general plan.
Oh, okay. So that would be what you would apply. You also want to be consistent in your prior interpretations as you move forward and continue to apply those guidelines.
So in the past, the general plan says primary views are generally defined as what you would consider are the views around here, the lagoon, Golden Gate Bridge, Tiburon Hills, Sausalito, sort of the major focal points of why you would live in Belvedere. And that those primary views are protected in common living areas, and common living areas have been defined as living rooms. You know, we oftentimes fast forward to today where we sort of spend more time in our kitchens. Kitchens are not considered areas where your primary view would be protected, nor are bedrooms, powder rooms, bathrooms, etc.
And privacy?
I'm not aware of any guidelines as to privacy. Normally speaking, people don't, you think about where would one expect to be private in one's home? Well, your bathroom, you generally have opaque or some means of masking the window in your bathroom, but perhaps some people would think that you have a right not to have a window looking right down straight into your bedroom. Or even your living room. It's variable, and the important thing is that the commission try to be consistent in what it considers to be invasive of privacy. And sound also is an element of privacy. If you can hear things, you know, parties in the hot tub, that might be considered an invasion of privacy too.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
A question
Sure.
kind of on this topic. I know there's been a lot of discussion about the exception to floor area and the exemption and how it's being applied here. And I don't think I'm in the minority. I might be, but I just think given all the recent changes to state law, that it would be helpful to revisit this portion of the code. This was done many years ago. Times have changed, and I don't think that projects should necessarily be legacied in. We should be able to look at these on a specific site by site basis based on context and what's going on with the lot and be able to just have more discretion there. So I don't know if it's a committee, if it's, if other commissioners want to weigh in and feel that we should revisit this, and obviously community would need to weigh in, but I think it's worth a discussion because it's obviously a pertinent topic.
So maybe we can have a staff report and have it agendized at a future meeting.
I think we need other commissioners to weigh in on that.
Oh, you want our
I
opinion?
agree.
Oh, yeah.
I
Okay,
agree.
thank
It's-
you.
I
I
think
think
that's
we
a good
need
idea.
more than one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you.
Against? All right, unanimous.
Sorry, I have one further question. Sammy, when you were going through the window plans, I had a question about what I'll call, sorry. I had a question about what I'll call yes, so you can see it here, the bridge between the two volumes. I understood that that was also glass, that was also window. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm not mistaken, I believe it's a 33-foot long, two sliding glass doors on parallel to each other.
So the whole thing isn't glass, it's just, it's just
believe-
two 33-foot long sliding glass
I
doors.
believe
Okay.
the entire length of it is 33 feet, the whole
Yeah.
thing is.
Okay, so it is all just, okay, thank you.
But it has a roof, not, the roof is not glass. It's a typical roof.
That's
Or
correct,
it's
I
a
believe
roof that's
so.
consistent with the rest of the property or project.
And it's cantilevered, so it's not counted. Is that correct?
It's towards floor area.
It is on?
It is
Okay.
counted.
Seeing no more questions, could we hear from the applicant? Applicant's team?
Chip, you should be able to speak now.
Okay, great. Can you hear me there in the room?
Yeah, yes, we
If you
can.
could speak a little bit louder, it'd be helpful.
Okay, I'll do my best. I'm going to keep this really, really brief because we've already taken quite a bit of time and I want to make sure that Fed and the architects have an opportunity to really take you through the details. I just want to reinforce, I guess, what Sammy said earlier, which is we're not seeking approval tonight. We do have this volume requirement that we don't meet at this point. It's about a 10% delta, and we're working on meeting that requirement. And in doing so, I think you're going to see that the ceiling height is going to come down in many parts of the house. It's basically the only way we're going to get there. So there's work in progress. The other thing I would say is we've had really good and productive open dialogue with a number of the neighbors. We understand some of their concerns and, you know, we're going to be neighbors for a long, long time. This is going to be our forever house. And so our goal is to work collaboratively and productively with the neighbors on, you know, finding hopefully win-win solutions. We're all going to have to make some compromises here to get what we want. And that is our goal going in. But the plan is to get input tonight and hear from everybody so that we can then go off productively and try to find a solution that kind of checks all the boxes so that we can come back in a month, hopefully to seek approval. And with that, I will turn it over to Fed.
Hi, commissioners. Hi, my name is Federico Engel. I'm with Butler Armisen Architects. I wish this microphone was just a little bit taller here. But we'll see what we could do.
Can you hold it?
Oh, yeah. Great idea. And I can walk around. Chip, thanks for kicking us off. Commissioners, thanks for your time this evening. Rebecca and Sammy, thanks for all your work reviewing the project so far. And absolutely. And I'll do my best here. And neighbors, we haven't heard from you so far, but we've spoken to several of you guys. I think we value your feedback. We value your time so far on the project, and we look forward to additional conversations. With that, I think we can all agree that 322 San Rafael is a very special site. It's not only let me start. How's that? Can everybody hear? No?
It's on all the way.
Let me keep going with a small mic and I'll speak as closely to the mic as possible. Sorry for whoever has to follow me here, including the neighbors. Let me start over. I think we can all agree that 322 San Rafael is a special property. It's one of the largest on the lagoon as far as we could see. It has an amazing orientation in a north-south direction. Directed to the north, we could see obviously the Belvedere Lagoon, the Tiburon Hills in the background. On the south side, which is currently underutilized, there's tremendous potential for outdoor space. And I'd like to note also that for a couple decades, it was also owned by a very respected family here in Belvedere. So Chip and Juliet and the rest of the design team here, we're really honored to be the stewards of this property. We take this very seriously. We're hoping that when all is said and done, that Chip and Juliet, maybe without the entire design team, can also enjoy what the property has to offer for a few decades to come. Chip didn't note this, but he does currently live on the lagoon with Juliet. So they are very familiar with what that means and really value this amazing shared resource, which is the Belvedere Lagoon. Bless you. When we embarked on the design process, we discovered relatively quickly that we could not save the existing house, even though it's beautiful, as you can see from these photos. Any remodel would obviously trigger the 50% threshold for a FEMA elevation raise. And because the foundation is a slab on grade, there's really no way to elevate this house by 3 feet. In any kind of way. So then we dug deeper into the typical development code standards. In early discussions with the planning department, we learned that we could match the FAR and the square footage, which is the 5,400, which is a topic of conversation, obviously, but we've operated with that assumption from early on. The code or I guess trigger number 4 about the volume was something that was not caught till very recently. I think it's been mentioned we've completed our volume calculations. We're 10% over, plus or minus. We think we can achieve, we can solve for this volume overage with subtle design changes, like lowering the roof throughout by 6 inches in the range of 6 inches, lowering the great room roof in the range of 12 to 18 inches, and making some floor area adjustments, hopefully in secondary spaces like the garage and the mechanical room. So I think it's very much within kind of our reach. We do want to note, obviously, I think it's been mentioned before, we haven't incorporated these changes to the design right now. We'll probably need another week or so. At that point, we'll submit it to the planning department. We'll review it with neighbors. We'll adjust the story poles. So you'll get kind of a fresh view at what that volume reduction looks like. I do hope that, it benefits a lot of the neighbors and addresses a lot of the concerns about height and volume. I see that we have 4 minutes. We have another speaker or two here.
We've
Uh,
had some technical difficulties, so you can have a little more time.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Further, I want to continue kind of on our kind of design approach because we did study the neighborhood at length. Again, we have this unique property, but we also understand that the Belvedere Lagoon, thanks to Chip and Juliet who have lived there, thanks to neighbors, thanks to previous experience, it's a very special place. We do a lot of work in Seadrift and Stinson Beach, which is also a lagoon setting. There's some comparisons, which I could talk about for a long time, but not today. But anyways, we looked at a lot of adjacent properties, kind of using the same control sample, which is what you see here. We learned that there's a lot of single-story homes. There's some two-story homes. There's some two-story homes with balconies. There are a lot of homes that meet the prescriptive setbacks on one or two sides. There's a lot of homes that have large courtyards, a lot of privacy and hedges on the sides. We learned obviously that San Rafael is a very busy street, that we needed to protect against that, as most of the houses do already. And then obviously there's a lot of glass and glazing on the lagoon sides of homes. As you could tell, it's obviously the asset or the resource that everybody wants to enjoy as much as possible. So with that, we embarked on really two key design elements. Number one is kind of what I call the rear yard, which is that lagoon area open space, which you can see here on the map, which is 7,200 square feet. I think of this as a really kind of key, important, somewhat sacred number. And that's the existing number. The change or the design that we have proposed has adjusted that number a little bit. We've gone further towards the lagoon with a primary bedroom, but we've also shifted back with a great room, which is that higher volume. So the net increase or net impact to that open space is no impact. So we stay at 7,200 square feet. And you'll hear me mention this 7,200 square feet a couple of times. I think it's a very unique number. We've obviously studied the properties, as you could see here on the map, but we've also looked at the lagoon in general and haven't seen any other property with that type of rear yard. So I just want to note that in, kind of in combination with additional setbacks. The second key feature of the design project is breaking down the program of the project into separate pavilions. So we have 5 pavilions in total, the garage, the guests, the great room, the primary suite, and the ADU. I'm going to count the ADU as a pavilion in this case, even if it might not be reviewed. And I think the beauty of kind of this pavilion scheme is a few things. One, it allows us to distribute the volume and the floor area around the site. So we're not really impacting one particular neighbor more than the other. It allows us to primarily design a single-story house because we have the area for that. We do have a small 400 and change square foot second floor. And it allows us to capture this, very usable south-facing center courtyard, which is really, I think, the heart of the outdoor space for Chip and Juliet. It's anchored with that 25-foot swimming pool that we talked about, 25-meter swimming pool that we talked about earlier. And it's connected. Again, most of the activity will happen in this south-facing courtyard, but it's connected to the lagoon courtyard through that glass corridor, both visually and when it opens, it's a way of access. And we're really proud of the glass hallway too, because it internally, it connects the living spaces of the great room and the primary suite. Let's see, the overall design aesthetic, as you could see, is modern. but the materials and the shapes and the design language is what I would consider timeless. That's really what we're looking for here, not something that's going to go out of fashion. The material palette, and we do have the materials. You saw some of them this weekend, but we could take another look at them. They're here with us. I would call the materials as neutral, including cream colored travertine, split face stone. Again, creating this quiet and timeless quality. Together with the extensive use of wood, especially at the front facade, that's our nod to the Marin redwood vernacular tradition. And I noted one of my favorite buildings is the Christian Science Church right across the street. But I don't think I'm going to get any points for that because I know it's not on everybody's favorite list. As Chip noted, we've had really good conversations with neighbors. I'd like to note a few of those. We did want to jump right in to mitigating some of those conditions. I think the visibility of the volume will be mitigated inherently just with the overall height reduction. And again, I'll be more specific with 6, 12, 18 inches very soon. But you'll see that in the story poles. I think the landscaping on the sides will go a long way. I also do want to note two things about the story poles. One is that we're a little bit at a disadvantage because we have to go up 3 to 4 feet in some cases because of this FEMA elevation. So if you were to visualize the story poles, which look high, but if you could visualize reducing the story poles by 3 or 4 feet, I think we would have a pretty modest structure. Or alternatively, which is a little harder to do, but if you could visualize all our adjacent neighbors going up 3 or 4 feet, which is ultimately, I think, what's going to happen when everybody rebuilds to a FEMA elevation. I think all these structures will be much more equitable across the board. Landscaping on the rear yard was noted with the Layward neighbors, and we have updated the renderings. As you could see, we've darkened the materials. We do have the pea gravel sample with us. We previously had a lighter colored hardstone or hardscape, and we've added quite a bit of landscaping on the back. Again, we think of that as 7,200 square feet of just beautiful landscaped, softly terraced area that goes up from the lagoon up to the house. A couple more quick adjustments, and then I'll turn it over to the surface design landscape team. In terms of the exterior lighting, we hear you. We saw it actually on the Leeward side, who shared some photographs. We'll go ahead and just remove all the exterior lighting on the lagoon side that is not necessary for safety. So I think that cuts down quite a bit, including the overhang or overhead lights. And I think the last one, is the glazing amount. I think Sammy did a terrific job of describing the glazing amount. I'd like to add a few notes to that. Again, I think the amount of glazing is going to come down when, again, our heights come down. In addition to removing the lighting on the overhangs, I think we have several areas where we're mitigating the amount of glass. That includes the overhangs, includes the walls extensions, so it's much more inset. And I think the two key factors for me, I'll mention it one last time, is the 7,200 square feet of open landscape space, which is really going to create, I think, this amazing buffer between the lagoon and the house. I think, again, it's a very unique condition not seen on other homes. And, kind of as another number that I can throw out is like the glass hallway, which you could see just right there in the middle there. That's 90 feet setback from the edge of the lagoon. So the setback of these glass elements is, again, another condition that I don't think exists really on any other property on the lagoon. So again, we are asking for, a generous amount of glass on the north facade, but I think it is mitigated by the distance and the landscape condition. One last factor to note is when you take and we talked to the leeward neighbors about this as well, but there was concern about windows on the east elevation because they do see the east elevation as a primary elevation from their view. And that is where we really took the opportunity to either reduce or eliminate all the glass. So if you take those two facades kind of in aggregate, the amount of glass for those two facades that are visible for the leeward neighbors, I think is really actually below normal for the lagoon condition. We have a study of glazing quantities in the packet that we're happy to share for context. I'm sure I missed something, but I'm way over time, so I appreciate it. If it's okay, I'm going to turn it over to Surface Design.
So yeah, if they could do it quickly.
And then I'm available for questions as well as Chelsea.
Perfect.
We appreciate your time, and I think we're looking forward to collaboratively coming up with solutions anywhere we need it.
Thank you.
I don't necessarily need to hold it, huh? My name is Ty Jones Powell with the. Strategic
No, you
Plan-
have to talk into the microphone.
Sorry, okay.
You can bend it.
Oh, there we go. Okay, my name is Ty Jones Powell with Surface Design Landscape Architecture. We are very excited to work on this project. It is a very special place, very cool spot in the Bay. And we're excited to work with everybody to make the house feel settled into the neighborhood. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of touch on, we've heard a number of comments and concerns. We want to respond to those and maybe give a little bit more detail on some of the heights and species that we're looking to do here. Cork oaks on the front. One of the cool things about where we're at is all of the oak trees up on the hill. So the cork, using cork trees, which are much more upright than the interior live oaks, makes for a great street tree. It's evergreen and gets about 35 to 40 feet tall, which will help screen from some of the views down into the property, and as well as provide evergreen screening throughout the year. The property line hedges were mentioned. So at installation would be 8 feet. And these are very fast growing. This is a very fast growing species we've used throughout Sonoma County. The growth rate can be as much as 2 feet a year. So we would anticipate within 5 years with neighbor agreements that we could provide that privacy and that screening along the sides, and still maintaining. This is a species that does tolerate heavy pruning and shearing, so we would be able to get that height within the 3-foot width. In the central courtyard, mentioned olive trees towards the front, and that's a similar strategy to the oaks, providing an evergreen screening from the street and from the properties above. A number of Japanese maples from the site. We're interested in transplanting those, saving those, and caring for them off-site and bringing back in. And then incorporating a mix of larger shrubs in the central courtyard. And on the lagoon side, on the gradual steps up, again, there's 3 arbutus trees that we're interested in saving and caring for off-site, and using. These are evergreen trees that get about 35 to 40 feet, 20 to 25 feet height. So helping screen the corners, screening the house from the corners. We're also looking to bring in some larger 15 to 18 silk tassel bushes to layer in that privacy screening. and then larger shrubs throughout the middle, which will help screen the house from the lagoon. And last slide here. In general, we're using all native and adapted species and bringing in habitat color that will benefit the neighborhood.
Could you kind of wrap it up a little bit?
I'm done.
Okay. Good job. Is that it? Okay. All right.
want to give us more time.
No, you've had plenty of time. Did you not sit through that thing on the Brown Act?
3 more minutes.
I think I might have violated it, but anyway. I do allow people, I think it's important for the architectural team to present, and we do have technical difficulties and all that. So, and it's a little complicated. So I'm going to open it up for questions to the architectural team. Does anyone have questions? Kevin?
Why not? Thank you for that presentation and the updated materials. I might as well start with the tree.
Can I just clarify one thing before we go forward? Then you can continue. This is a time for question. It's not time for you to give your opinion. You're not really going to be giving your opinion tonight. You're just going to give your thoughts on parts of the design. So please try to refrain from opinions.
Will you bring it back after we ask for questions, or no, this is our chance to give all of our
Well,
feedback?
yeah, you'll be able to give feedback, but not really like we normally do with our opinions of, what am I trying to say?
It's acceptable, of course, for you to give your opinions. They are looking for feedback, but you might want to hold off until you hear public comment.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So
So we'll bring it back.
So before we vote
yeah.
to
It's just
continue,
questions.
yeah, because we'll have to vote to continue. And so maybe,
But we will get an opportunity to say something after public comment.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
so I'll start with the tree, the cedar tree. So given that there are concerns from the community that this tree not be removed, or there's definitely a strong preference that it not be removed, what can you do to address those concerns, or what could you do to address those concerns?
Yeah, so I think the general location of the existing tree is very close to the 2 new oak trees that we're proposing on the street, both of which will get at or above the height of that cedar.
If I can add, can you hear me still? Can you hear me?
Oh,
I take a look at that cedar tree. It's in pretty rough shape. This is an upgrade. I mean, putting in these 2 oak trees would be a significant upgrade to that ugly, ragged cedar tree.
thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So your remedy would be to add the 2 oak trees in lieu of the cedar tree.
Yeah, and as Chip said, the tree, it's been topped, it's been limbed up, it's been, which generally with cedar trees, as soon as you take the top off, it's only a matter of time before it starts to decline. So given its size, it looks to already be in decline.
Do you have an arborist report that validates that, or is
We
that?
don't.
Okay,
No, this
That's
is
fine.
just our observation.
great, thanks. Why don't I move on to the master, what I'll call the master and office structure, or,
Primary.
I'm sorry, the
Can I
primary.
Just
Yeah.
jump in on the tree
Tree, yeah.
thing before we move on from trees. So typically when you take a tree out here, we look for 2 replacement trees. So I think that's going to be a really good guiding principle for you for the next iteration, is aim for that. You're taking, I think, maybe 12 or so out. So we would want to see in the neighborhood of 24. And I would also really make an effort to preserve that cedar tree in the front. So just as a note for you for next round. Thank you.
And so, sorry.
Go
continuing
ahead,
with the
Jenna, you
tree-
can talk
Continuing
now.
with the tree. So there'll be how many trees removed in total?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Sorry,
I
Sammy,
think
Sammy, you may know the
15.
answer to this as well.
15.
15, thank you.
Some of which we're saving. and caring for offsite and bringing back in. Some of the trees we're saving and we'll care for offsite and then bring back and plant.
So is it 15 trees total being removed, or is it a smaller number because some of them are coming back?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Why don't we give them time to
Okay.
check the
Yeah,
plans
yeah,
and then they
that's
can
fine.
get back
Yeah.
to us
Yeah,
on
thank
that.
you.
So, and I think the solution to the tree is to get an arborist report.
So thank you for the correction. The primary and office pavilion, I had a concern about the mass and bulking of that particular structure in terms of eliminating the view and privacy and degrading the overall backyard experience of 328 San Rafael. So I was wondering, what could you do to address that? I mean, okay.
I was going to ask maybe a little bit more information in terms of what do you see degrading in terms of
So if you look at,
privacy or views on 328?
if you look at their current view, their primary view, it would be very much changed based on the introduction of the new structure. So there's currently a building there, but what you're proposing is far wider and much higher than what's there. So it's certainly changing their primary view, which, as you know, number 4 of the exemption, that would actually get in the way of that. But let's just put that aside for a minute. I'm just wondering, what could you do to address that concern that mass and bulking eliminates view and privacy?
Sure. Yeah, if you could look, I'd be interested to dig in a little deeper in terms of what the primary view is. I was there. I saw the mass as visible from the rear yard. There's no doubt that it's larger than what's there now. Perfect. Thank you, Chelsea. I think the question is what, for me, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about what is that general or that primary view, because I understood that the primary view was a primary view of the hills of the lagoon from a primary living space.
I mean, do you want me to point it out? It's the hill and no hill.
It would be looking out at the lagoon. This is a left looking, if you were facing the lagoon, they are looking to the left here. And don't forget, again, we're raising the level of the floor 3 to 4 feet. If you just look at the current structure, add another 3 or 4 feet, it's going to change the view already. And that's something we have to do.
Correct.
The primary view is looking at the lagoon out the primary residence, which is the living room. That's not what this picture represents.
Okay, that's a reasonable opinion to have. I mean, others could have different opinions on that for sure. But my question still is the mass and bulking. So you're saying there's nothing that can be done?
I haven't said that yet. I think, again, I'd like to understand a little bit more. What exactly is the
Well, I think the
concern?
concern is just it's the mass and bulking. I mean, obviously, it's very different than the current condition. And so I think the neighbor's very concerned about the mass and bulking.
Understood.
As we said, the ceiling is most likely going to come down 6 to 12 inches. So that's a starting point. And then I think there's a lot that can be done if we mutually agree with landscaping.
Mm-hmm. And what about if you were to shift the structure back so it would be adjacent to the primary residence of 328 versus where it is? I mean, that is something you could do. I don't know if you'd want to do that, but that's something you could do.
I don't think we could do it and keep a pool. And if we can't keep a pool, we're not doing a house.
Okay.
Yeah. We explored options. I think in general, in my experience, although there's obviously different opinions, and I might be a little bit biased as well.
Right.
I thought it was a reasonable gesture that the open space, our courtyard open space, was adjacent to their structure. A consequence of that is, yes, that the primary suite and the second floor gets pushed more towards the lagoon
right
side.
And so is the office more important than the pool?
Well, if I could just jump into on the massing, and it's sorry, the font is very small on here, but if you see the second little plan diagram that we're showing, not including the ADU, which we're, not considering for this hearing, thank you, Fed, where we really only have about 32 feet of frontage on the property line, which is over 215 feet long on that side. We are following the setbacks that are prescribed for both the first story and second story. The story pole is actually, even though we're required to bring our floor elevation up the additional 3 feet, the first floor is actually the exact same height as the current house that's there. So the building is actually 3 feet shorter than the current building that's there if that were raised up. There's no windows on this facade. The only window that does face this way is set back in a courtyard. And the landscaping that we're showing on the side is shown at 8 feet tall because that is what we are required to go in at starting planting height. But as Ty mentioned, it does grow to be up to about like 15 feet tall. So that whole first story and part of the second story actually gets covered by landscaping with just a few short years. And if we can agree with our neighbors to go in and plant hedges that are 12 feet tall at the start of construction, immediately that whole first level is completely covered.
Since you're asking for feedback as you go forward to come back with additional revisions, I would suggest sitting down with the neighbor and having that discussion, because my understanding is just covering the structure. So essentially it's a green wall instead of a limestone wall that they would be looking at. It still does, it has the same effect. It still blocks what is currently their experience. It becomes a green mass instead of a limestone mass. So
Questions, please, questions on that.
So what I would ask you to do is, well, I guess I did ask you. And so you said if you needed to shift the house back and it affected the pool, you didn't want to build the house. I guess that was the answer.
Yeah, the pool is an important design element, and so that would be an issue.
And is the pool more important than the office? Or is the office more important than the pool?
You really want to start negotiating right now?
No, I'm asking a question.
I don't really know an answer.
Let's move on.
I'm not sure.
All right, we'll move on. Actually, I'll defer to another commissioner instead of going down my list for right now.
Alex?
I wanted to ask, the stone cladding that I saw when I met you this weekend on site, is that the revised color or was that the original color?
I don't know, you probably didn't hear that, but the stone cladding itself hasn't changed. It's still the cream colored travertine and the split face stone that you saw this weekend. If somebody noted that, I think that was an error. The materials that have changed are specifically, I would say, the hardscape in that rear yard, which is rendered there. So it's a pea gravel. Again, we had a light colored hardscape. That's what's changed. So that's gone from a light colored hardscape to a pea gravel. No change on the cladding as of yet. Correct.
I just want to follow up on the cladding question. The rougher stone, I know that you had said when we visited this weekend that that's what's being proposed to be used on the office second floor. Is that I guess, how is that applied?
It is, I think we have a reference image. It is a random stack stone, very similar to right here.
So that's what the second story office would look like.
Correct, correct.
One follow-up on the travertine. The effect of salt water, salt air over time, does it get lighter, darker, stay the same?
Fair question. I'll try to have an answer to you for the next hearing or ahead of the next hearing.
Great.
Are you through, Alex?
I had a question about a follow-up on the travertine.
Oh, go ahead.
So one of the other concerns that came to us from the neighbors, and it's in the written documentation, is the lightness of the travertine, and they're concerned about glare of that, especially since there's so much of it.
Mhm.
So how would you address that concern?
You know, I'm, to be honest, mixed feelings. I think it's, it's a cream colored, borderline tan colored stone. It's not white. There's a lot of white buildings out on the lagoon. We're not white. We don't want to be white. We want to be kind of neutral colored. Stone comes in varying colors. If we have to get an assortment or a full range, a full color range, and say, hey, we want to be in this group, or we want to be in this group, I think we could work with staff and use this as an initial control sample.
So travertine does come in different shades.
Yes, and if it's not travertine, I mean, there's limestones
Yeah.
that we could look
Okay.
at that have a very similar kind of pattern.
Okay.
But we specifically like the travertine because it's a little porous. You could see it has kind of holes in it. And I think that's going to kind of give the stone a lot more character than a honed material.
Right.
I was going to add to
Ashley?
exactly on the, just to add to that, exactly on the surfacing, there's multiple tones within the material. It's not a polished or a honed surface, so it's not smooth. So a lot of the pores will absorb. And then if you look at this image on the top left here, this is all the same material. And you're of course just seeing some facades in shadow and some in sunlight. And the lagoon side of our property is the north facing side, so it will not have direct sunlight on it. So you'll always see the material more in this like darker shaded tone.
Thank you. Vice Chair Johnson?
Can you clarify the roof material and color?
Yeah, Chelsea, you jump on.
We did propose just a membrane roofing. We also proposed, which we did show in a light color, which is, typically just a little bit better for energy purposes. We're definitely willing to talk about the coloring of that. Sorry, we don't have it in an image here. On top of the primary living area, we are proposing a pebble roof on top of that. So it will be the same. If you go to the previous slide, I guess kind of at the bottom here, it will be that kind of number 9, very similar coloring, earth tone as well, but we're happy to discuss the actual coloring of the flat roof membrane.
Okay, I think that it has to be a dark color, if I'm not mistaken. So just for next time, think about, you've got a bunch of neighbors up the hill who are going to be looking down right at the roof. And so we just want to avoid something that's going to be really reflective. Can you just clarify the lighting plan for that glass hallway between the two structures? Is there, I don't think I saw any on the plan, but I just want to clarify that if there's any planned for that walkway.
So we have not fully developed an interior lighting plan. We just have exterior lighting at this point. We would want, a couple of recessed cans in the ceiling just for safety of walking through at nighttime. But on the exterior, on just one on each side of that glass bridge, we have just a safety path light.
Is that finished floor? Is that outside?
It's a finished floor, kind of when the doors are closed, that's part of our
Part of the
area
home.
and conditioned space.
Okay. If it's possible, I would think about lighting at the floor level and not up high, because you've got a glass box there, and you, on top of that, you've got all of the lighting on the lagoon side, and I'm sorry, all of the glazing on the lagoon side. So just in places where you can put the lights down low, I think it would help a lot.
Thank you. And yes, that is exactly what we are trying to propose with our landscape lighting here. We did bring in some sample fixtures with us if anyone would like to see. But all of the path lights, we've removed all the step lights shown here with X's on them that were previously proposed, and are proposing just safety path lighting at the steps. So you can kind of have wayfinding. We've also proposed to remove all the recessed cans in our overhang for just a downward facing sconce there as well to try to reduce exterior lighting.
I just to add to what Chelsea just said, that interior hallway between the great room wing and the primary wing, if you will, don't forget, Fed said that's 90 feet back from the lagoon. It's a distance. And it's a pretty narrow hallway. We don't have an interior lighting plan, but it would probably be 2 or 3 cans, I would imagine. But it's way back from the lagoon.
Okay. Are there enclosures for garbage and recycle? I didn't catch any on the plan.
We do have a side gate on the property line on this side, and we did have this kind of back area off the street proposed for trash. Okay, kind of where my cursor is here.
Okay. And then I just wanted to confirm, there has been a lot of feedback on window size and placement. We had discussed this, and then I think you were going to revise. So I don't know if what we're seeing is the most updated, but in particular, there's a window from the kitchen that's, I think, can be cut down quite a bit in size. So has that window plan been updated?
Windows have not been updated. I think you'll see an updated, I'd love to hear a little bit more feedback on the windows and see if there's a general direction. But I would think, again, that change would come when we do the height and volume change. We'll revisit the windows.
Talking about windows, you said you have a percentage of glass. Do you know what that percentage is?
We don't have it with us. We can put it together.
Okay.
We
All
do have just a contextual study. I think it's one of the slides that we flipped through that just showed kind of a general assortment of homes with what looks to be quite a bit of glass.
Yeah, and don't forget, the glass is going to come down. When the ceilings come down, the size of those sliding glass doors will come down. Everything will get reduced when we meet the volume requirement.
Exactly.
Just one quick clarification on the bulkhead. So engineered bulkhead would be installed before the start of construction.
Is that a question or a request?
We
Yes.
discussed it. Maybe it's both.
Yes.
But so we definitely want an engineered bulkhead, the whole length. And then now I'm going to get this wrong, but does it happen before demolition or after demolition? So we may need to just clarify that. And maybe Rebecca can.
I
We-
think,
I
think
would,
if you-
I was just going to say, we're totally on board with redoing the bulkhead, so no issue there. We've been talking about it right from day one. My understanding is the permitting on that is a very challenging thing. And so I would hate to commit to sequencing it as the first thing, because it may take a long time to get the permits for that. So that's the only concern that I would have, but
Yeah.
without question, it's going to get done. We want to do it. We're committed to doing it, but it's a process from what I understand. There are like 4 or 5 different agencies that have to approve it.
We've been speaking with BLPOA on the bulkhead and are planning on replacing it for the entire length of the property line. We also spoke with some bulkhead engineers and construction teams who actually install them, just to kind of figure out, like, is it better at the start of construction? Do we need to do it when the water's high, when the water's low? And actually the feedback we surprisingly got was that it doesn't really matter. We would probably want to do it when the water's low. just to reduce impact and, get the bulkhead in as soon as we can. But there didn't seem to be, at least from our discussion so far with BLPOA, any specific requirements about that.
Okay, I think if it happens after demolition, construction, that there needs to be a very clear
Erosion control
plan
and management.
to protect the
yes,
waters. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
I think that the bulkhead is not necessarily a design review finding. I know in the larger project that recently was approved here, we left it up to the building official. First of all, it would have to be a condition of approval, should you be able to approve this project, that you would add saying that the bulkhead is, a new bulkhead is required to be constructed at, the timing of it. I'm not a professional in bulkhead construction nor construction. We left it up to the building official. I think, you need to get the soils engineers and all the other professionals to weigh in on when exactly that bulkhead should be installed, but the condition could read that a new bulkhead shall be installed.
Done?
Okay, one
Oh,
more
no, that's
question.
okay.
One more question, just about the pool. You're halfway to an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Did you explore other shapes, sizes, placements? Because I think a lot of what we're discussing up here and we'll discuss in a minute can be resolved by reconfiguring and shrinking the size of the pool, and you would still have a really big pool.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, we bought this lot to build our kind of dream home. We're both very athletic. I'm a swimmer. We bought our first house on the lagoon so I could swim in the lagoon. Can only really swim in the lagoon a few months of the year. And I want a lap pool. And, a lap pool is 25 meters. You could do a shorter pool, but then it's not a real lap pool and it's not going to be ours. And I'll remind you that there is a tennis court just a couple of houses down, and a full-size tennis court is bigger than a lap pool. It's a narrow lap pool. The thing that everybody should feel good about is pretty much the only thing that's going to happen in that pool is one guy swimming up and down the lengths of the pool. It's going to be quiet. There's no hot tub there. We're not going to put a hot tub in. It's not going to be a party pool. It's specifically for lap swimming because I'm a swimmer. And I want to put a legitimate, lap pool in, which is 25 meters.
And Commissioner Johnson, I do want to note, we went through a lot of massing and program exploration on where to put these 5 pavilions plus the swimming pool. So we did a lot of iterations. I think there's, you can argue pros and cons of all of them, but this one seemed for us the one that kind of checked the most boxes.
Okay.
And in fact, I mean, there are really only a couple of lots that you could do a lap pool on the lagoon. And we felt blessed that we were able to get one of the lots. And that's why we're building this house here. So it is, when we gave the brief to the architects, we said we want to build basically a health and wellness resort. That's our forever home. And so it's been built with, kind of a very zen, very calm, very peaceful tones and everything else that we've been talking about. And then the JADU is going to be a gym. And then right outside the gym is going to be the
No, don't tell us that, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Pat.
Like I said, it's going to be a JADU, Commissioner Pat.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Uh,
I just took a break. No, I want to go back to the primary in the office building. My question is, did you meet with the neighbors on Bayview whose views will be impacted?
We did not meet with the neighbors on Bayview.
Good idea to do that.
Thank you.
One other, just as logistics of the site, is where are the HVAC and pool equipment housed?
So if I jump back to my lighting plan here, so we have a separate pool equipment area here and kind of exterior where there's some equipment that's required. That's all kind of in this exterior alcove off the street. And we're proposing additional equipment kind of in an acoustic enclosure on the side yard over here as well,
Got
kind
it.
of between the building and side yard setback.
Got it. Will you stay on this one? Because I had another question related to exterior lighting. So how do you envision the exterior lighting on the property line outside? I guess these are 2 guest bedrooms. Like, what's the plan?
Over here.
Mhm.
So these are just 2 sconces outside of each door, which is this fixture that you see in this image. So it's very low lighting, downward facing, and it's really just next to each doorway for safety.
Got it. I think that's, and yeah, I think that's safe for later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I had one follow-up question about the glazing. I know when we met this weekend, you had said that the glass was specially coated or specially treated, and I've forgotten exactly what you said, so I would like you to say it again. Thank you.
Of course, and we have the sample with us. There's all sorts of numbers on it. I think it's pretty common nowadays in terms of energy efficient dual pane glass. It has a low E, which is emission. It's a low E coating, and I think the number that I picked up from the sample that Chelsea's holding is that it blocks 30% of visible light transmission. So only 70% of light actually gets through that. That's mostly for sunlight, to protect against sunlight, but it would be the equivalent for electrical light. Although I'm getting a,
So is that light going in and light going out?
yes,
Okay.
it blocks
I didn't know if
30%.
it was
And
like
I,
vortex where it was like a one-way.
no,
Okay.
I don't think so. No, and I'll
Okay.
verify for the planning
Thank
department
you.
ahead of time as well.
Anyone else? Sure.
I was just wondering, in the set, is there a calculation for total area of roof?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Might be interesting. And the lines, are those indicating just drainage lines, general idea of where drainage on the roof might end up going?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. All our internal drainage is just proposed internal drain system. It'll go right through the roof into internal walls and be picked up underground.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I have some questions. First question, on the fill, what material are you filling with?
We are proposing a geofoam fill, and it's not fully engineered at this point, we should note. So we have a geotechnical engineer, but we don't have a structural engineer on board on the project yet. I know that's been a question as to whether geofoam should be counted as fill or not. Obviously, we did count it in our current set, but if we need to revise that and take it out and reduce the fill quantity, we're happy to do that.
So you have the geotech foam and then you put dirt over it.
In certain areas, or you could set the foundation
Or
of the building.
the building, the
Exactly,
building's
right on
over it.
top,
But
yes.
otherwise you would have dirt. So not all,
If it is a landscaped area, yes. Yes.
so not all that fill is dirt. It's geotech foam.
We call it geofoam, correct?
Okay. Okay, thank you for that clarification. I noted on page A021 that for next time, bring it in just for clarification for us, is that some of the lines were to the property line, which is on the other side of the high water level.
Yes.
So if those could get corrected, that would be good. And then on most of your pages where you have height, you have two figures. Like the 11.4, and then you have 21.4, I think, I'm from memory. So is that your measurement going down to nav?
Correct. So on our proposed elevations, 11'4" is from the 11-foot nav elevation requirement to top of roof.
Okay.
And then the 21-foot measurement is from the nav 11-foot to top of the second story.
Okay. I noticed on most of the plans that had, or most of the sheets, I should say, that had the height, you were actually measuring from finished floor. And code says you measure from existing grade.
So we have some overlays, and sorry, I don't have the sheet number in front of me, but we do have some of the sheets we were asked to add overlays of the, you can see in this bottom one where we have the outline of the existing and proposed together. And there are measurements taken, sorry, the cursor is not overlapping with the zoom button here, but at the bottom of this elevation, you can see the building elevation and then the grade of that above existing grade.
Okay, because normally what we see is a line at existing grade saying it's at 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever, and that then we know exactly how high up you have to go. So a lot of your measurements are being done from finished floor versus,
which is the same as the 11-foot NAV.
yeah, you're
D,
using 11
correct.
feet from the finished floor, but you're supposed to be measuring it from the existing grade. And the existing grade, for example, in the back where it's 16, whatever, is 3 to, I don't know what, 4 feet high.
Yes.
So your 16 feet is either 19 or 20 feet.
Right. And I do think Sammy had a slide with that kind of cumulative elevation, kind of giving the overall from existing grade. We were using, I have to pull up the code section, but we were using one of the code definitions for height, which asked us to take it from the 11-foot NAVD.
Mm. I don't think that's right.
We have, right, we have a two-pronged approach to height measurement in the lagoon.
29 feet.
29 feet existing grade to top of roof, and then BFE +1, 22 feet for 1 story, 26 for 2 story.
Right.
With the wedding cake effect.
But they're just measuring it from the finished floor.
I thought we had, oh, can
So-
you stop sharing and we can put up a slide to show you?
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have those, the correct measurements.
What pages are you on, Sammy?
I think A21 might have the measurement to existing grade.
Barely see this.
Is that out, Sammy? Well, I think
First floor.
we'll clarify it.
Yeah.
And have the
Let's get it
correct
clear.
set
Mhm.
reflective in the next planning commission meeting with our code.
Because I think the height is taller than they think when you measure it from existing grade. So could you please check that when you come back? I agree with Vice Chair or Chair in waiting. Johnson, that kitchen window needs to, even the consultant architect said that it was proportionally out of scale. The other thing is that I was struck after visiting the project with you and went around the corner to the homes on Lourdes. And when I walked into the Parquet House, I was shocked at how much those magnolias block, for them in particularly, block the view of the glass.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. but should we have public comment before you start providing?
Oh, well, I
feedback?
was just going to say, yeah, okay, I'll keep that for public comment. I was going to say, I think they need to stay. Oh, the other thing on your change, and this is just because I live on the lagoon, is I worry about those pea pebbles down by the dock that they could get pushed and get down into the water over time, which could be a problem with the water. So I don't know if those stairs, as you go down, should be in a different material.
I
Just
would
as a,
yeah, I would say excellent comment. We will definitely look into that.
And then, let's see, I had a couple other questions that came up.
One question on the pea pebbles, were you going to use any, isn't that what they're called? Sorry.
We call it pea gravel, but I like pea pebbles too.
Were you going to have any resin in them? Because I know that a lot of people, especially the hill dwellers, have like a sort of a sticky stuff that sticks their decomposed granite or pea pebbles or something like that together.
Yeah, we were not.
Okay, thank you.
Keep it natural.
Okay, so that's all the questions. I think most of my other questions were all taken up by others. So with that, thank you very much. We'll open up the public hearing and we'll invite you back at the end to give some feedback.
Great. Thank you for the questions, commissioners.
Is there anyone in the public that in the room wishes to speak? Please come, state your name.
Good evening. My name is Richard Kalish. I'm an attorney and I represent the Likas family and Ann Likas, who owns the property at 328 San Rafael Avenue, which is immediately adjacent to the property. I'd like to introduce Ann Likas. Ann is 92 years old and has lived in this home for 55 years. And next to Ann is her son, Harry. I'm going to keep this really short because I understand you're not going to be making any decisions and there are going to be changes made in the design. And we look forward to the opportunity to work with the applicant to resolve some of the issues, some of which you've raised, so that Ann can continue to live in her dream house where she's been for 55 years. The first floor, we have some issues with the first floor, but they're pretty much addressed with the landscaping. I don't have any real comments to make on the first floor. The second floor, however, does raise some issues. One of those is privacy. The staff report points out that there are no windows facing the 328 Lagoon Road, San Rafael Avenue. Well, it's true there are no windows on that side, but there's a deck on that side. And it's hard to see the difference between standing on a deck and looking into someone's property and standing behind a window and looking on somebody's property. That deck is a problem for us. But I'm quite sure there are solutions and we look forward to discussing those with the applicant. The second is the windows. The staff report points out that there are windows on the street side of the second floor, but that they don't look into any of the adjacent properties. There's a rendering that we saw that shows those windows on the street side of the second floor. But that rendering, the perspective is from the backyard of 328. The house is much closer to the street than the backyard, and those windows look directly into one of the bedrooms at 328. And I think that also, this is another thing we would like to discuss with the applicant. I think that there's probably solutions, and we look forward to doing that. The biggest issue we have with the second floor was brought up here tonight, and that is with the mass of it, the mass and the bulk. For 55 years, there has been zero invasion of privacy or any issues regarding privacy with the adjacent home, zero. So if we're looking, as the guidelines say, we're looking at how privacy changes with the new structure, the answer is 100%. And it was pointed out, the view of the hills and just the feel, which is what mass and bulk is about. It's the feel of the property, living under this wall that looms over our property. What have we got here? We've
I
been
don't know, it was a
invaded.
big bug.
So those are the issues. I like that, I heard some good ideas. Ideally, this is one of the largest lots on the lagoon. And the setback for the second floor from one side, from one property line, is 65 feet. The house on the other side. The setback is 65 feet, the second floor, and it's 10 feet on our side. The second floor was placed on the lot so that it becomes, instead of a property line with a fence, it's a large wall. And I think that hopefully moving that second, I guess it's an office and deck, hopefully that can address some of our concerns. And that's really all I wanted to say tonight. And I understand we'll have another opportunity on another occasion.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
How are you?
Fine.
Good. My name's Sean Plummer. I live at 28 Bayview with my wife and 3 children. Appreciate some of the commissioners coming out to take a look at our property. We are in a different vantage point than I think most people on the lagoon, where we're set back from San Rafael and raised up above. So if you look out of our primary views from our living room, children's bedrooms, dining room, et cetera, they all overlook the proposed project. So that is challenging from a privacy standpoint, where the windows from the office are looking directly back into our house. And potentially more importantly, from our primary view at a living room, about 70% of our view of the bay is obstructed by the proposed plans, both on the left side, where I believe the kitchen's going to be, as well as on the right side, where the office is proposed, are all blocking up those views. If those views are gone, it would be obviously horrible for us from a resale standpoint and enjoyment of the home. But what they're being replaced with is also challenging. We're looking at a very large flat roof. I believe the pebbles are going to be more earth in tone, but that is still a large obstruction to the enjoyment of the property. In reviewing the plans, I didn't see much in the way of blockage from the street side or screening, landscaping, et cetera, from the street side. So most of that from the lagoon side. So I'm curious what can be done to block some of the rooftop throughout the design. Those are the major components that we have. We believe would dramatically alter our enjoyment and use of our house, and feel it's not in keeping with the neighborhood and the adjacent properties. And obviously would have a massive impact on our primary views today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other than these technical difficulties, I think I could finish this.
It's not started yet.
But I may need 9, given Bill Gates hates me. It's the,
This one? You
no,
made a
no,
PowerPoint?
no, it's just three photographs. Where's the drive at? That's it. Yep. Those are the 3. Open up picture number 1. That's it. And how do I go from one to the other? Let's go back to number 1 first. No. Should we do it the old fashioned way?
So they're writing.
That's it. That's number 1. That's number, no, that's 2. Give them these pictures. Can I?
Now you go back, you have all of them at the top here, 1, 2, 3.
Okay,
So
go
as
ahead.
you talk, you can go through it.
Great. That's on the one first. One that looks like that. Right there. No, you're past. Right there. Okay. Katie, my wife, and Maureen feed their time to me, so I hope I don't need 9 minutes, especially after this.
I see my time too.
Okay.
If needed.
Thank you.
At the request of a couple of you, you asked that I bring the pictures, so I have. They're also on screen. And I'm going to get to that, but the reason for the photographs is if you hold them at about, photographs are strange. It can be far away, near away, the same thing. If you hold them about arm's length, that's exactly the size of the view. So I'll get to it. Anyway, Madam Chairman and Commissioners, I appreciate this opportunity to talk tonight. My name is David Parquet. I live at 12 Leeward Road with my wife, Katie, who you just met here in Belvedere. Living the very short distance across the lagoon from the proposed project, we are one of the future water neighbors, so to speak, of this project. As a preface, Katie and I want to express our thanks to Chip and Juliet Berg, the project's owners, and their architect, Federico, for reaching out to us and our other water neighbors and giving us advance notice of their project. That was really, really appreciated. That gave 6 of us neighbors the time to meet the Bergs and Fed to discuss their project and give them our initial thoughts. Shortly following that meeting, in our memo of August 16th, Katie and I outlined to you all of our comments on the project. I will not repeat them here because I expect that you will have read them. This evening, I'd like to instead give you some suggestions as to potential design changes for the project that I hope you will consider. The suggestions are based on Municipal Code Section 20, which I did discuss in detail in the memo. But following the detail in that code that we noted at the beginning of the memo, in sum, Section 20 requires, I think as staff outlined in a little different words, that a project must maintain the character of the community, not dominate or attract attention through color, mass, or inappropriate architectural expression, maintain attractiveness and character of the city when viewed by neighbors, including water neighbors. That's in the code, including views from the water. Include landscaping that softens and screens the project from offsite and uses natural materials which are least disruptive to the community. Based on that, I'll get to my suggestions in a minute, but let's first take a look at some of the photos from Katie's and my home, which you have, and we have photo number 1 up on the screen right now. That is the view that most of our water neighbors have. And that is the view from every major room in our house, as I believe it is every major room in our neighbors' houses. You can see the existing house and site and landscaping in the lower area of the picture, as well as the story poles on the proposed new project. This existing house, we feel, meets all of the requirements of Code Section 20. We don't believe, however, that the proposed new project as presently configured, and I acknowledge that there have been some update to the drawings that I haven't seen or fully digested, but as they were on drawings dated in May, which is what we reviewed with the owner and the architect, there were a lot of things that needed to be changed about the drawing, and we discussed them with the owner. And there may be some that have already been addressed. I've heard a lot of good things tonight from all of you. Frankly, I want to say that Katie and I both think the architect's design is fabulous. However, we think the location would be better suited, for example, to New Mexico, next to monuments that you see there, to fully show off what I'll call the grandeur of that project. So that's picture number 1. Now, if Bill Gates doesn't hate me. Oh, by the way, on this picture, if I can move my mouse, there we go. If you see these windows right here, those windows right there where that hand is, bottom windowsill, I think Fed was kind enough to add a piece of tape that's yellow, if you could see it in picture number 1, that represents grade or floor level of the first floor. So you can see what FEMA has done to raise the level. Now let's go to picture number 2. Picture number 2. Oh, there we go. Nope. It's picture number 3. I don't have picture number 2. Well, you got, what's that? Well, okay. Basically what I did was, this is a picture from last night or this morning. This is, so where is the last picture? That one over there. That one. There you go. No, it's not showing on the screen.
Which one do you want?
I want this one. Okay. That one, there you go. I'll call that picture number 2. That was taken last night in the dark. I've lightened it up just a little so you could see something besides total blackness. But you can see the same view as the one I took this morning in picture number 1. You can see that the present occupants of the house have their lights on. You could see the impact of night light on us looking at it's exactly the same view. And also the reflection on the water, which was rather still last night. So you can note in this picture the consequences of at least the existing house. I won't say that's bad, but it's not too bad. Now, are we going to be able to do picture number 3? This is the most important one to look at of all of the pictures.
Which one?
This one. Not up there. There we go. All right. What I did with the magic of Photoshop, which I am sure Fed could do better with his software and having actual dimensions, I took the story pole locations and marked in the same color of light as the existing light that you saw in the last picture, and show what those floor to ceiling windows, almost 15 foot tall in the great room, I'll call it, as well as the window in the, I call it the penthouse office, cause. And those are regardless of these magnolia trees that are in front. So this, with the landscape plan that at least I see has been proposed, is what we will be looking at in the picture. That is rather a significant difference. I have also turned off the lights in the existing, with Photoshop, the existing house. So what you see is what we will see at night with those unshaded windows. Again, I'm sure that Fed, if you could ask him to do these in his view, and that would be good. You can probably guess what my suggestions are going to be based on what you're seeing here. And it goes back to your code with the staff report underlined for you and what we can see when we see this. Number 1, reduce the ceiling height in the grape room by at least, not 6 to 24 inches, at least 3 feet. Present story poles for that room are about 20 feet above the existing grade. I showed you where the FEMA line was. And that 20 foot is the sum of 3 foot for FEMA, about 15 foot for the ceiling height, plus 2 foot for the thickness of the roof ceiling. That's 20 feet. Surely 12 foot versus 15 foot should suffice in that room. I was kind of looking around. I think 15 feet is probably where this light bulb is at the top right here. 12 feet is probably right about there. So we're suggesting that. Second, move the penthouse office to some other location on the lot. Surely with a lot of that size, there's a place to move it. It really is in an unacceptable location. Number 3, require that the bright colors that are presently proposed for the project's wall facing are changed to muted earth tone colors, as is required by the code. And number 4, and I think you're beginning to address that. Number 4, require a better job of screening the proposed project by more appropriate landscaping. You can see in these pictures that even leaving the magnolia trays in doesn't change this view of what we're going to see here. And number 5, and lastly, and frankly, most critical, require that the large expanses of floor to ceiling windows, as you can see in this view, and the other rooms, for example, the room in the penthouse office, are screened and reduced. Surely there must be a way that the architect can redesign these windows to have less open area to them. None of the present landscaping, including the magnolias, will fix that. I guess to conclude, we and our neighbors simply do not wish to be so disturbed at night with the resulting light, nor do we wish to continually see our neighbors' activities in what will likely be their most used rooms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Oh, yes. Is she?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Michelle Larson. I'm the owner of 320 Satterfield Avenue. I live on the other side. We've met with the Bergs, who are very nice, and we've met with Fed, who also was very nice. We expressed our concerns and we were very encouraged. I just want to put on record that it's a lot of volume from our side. My landscaping, well, it's not going to get high enough. And I see that they're proposing some very large landscaping. That brings into consideration shade issues, which means I may have to re-landscape my yard because, and I do take pride in my garden, and that's a very big thing. I don't have a big house, but I do have a big garden and I love it. It's my dream. So I kind of concur with all the rest of the neighbors. I think the volume is too much, the bass, the setback, all of it. It just needs to be tucked in. And I would appreciate that being noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? No? A retired commissioner.
You've all gotten my letter, so I won't go over everything. But I have to say, I was really quite disturbed driving by and seeing the 28-inch cedar tree when I found out that it was going to be taken out. And that's really part of the character of Belvedere. And we always hope that people incorporate new plantings with old plantings to keep some of that feeling, and also respect Belvedere and respect neighbors. And in my note, I also mentioned that it seems to me that both of the buildings could be moved back in from the neighbors, and particularly the second floor. This is a huge lot, and there's plenty of room to put some of that space on the level area without having an imposing second story on the neighbor on the south side. It's really, your choice to choose to do the right thing. And I think that's really, and sometimes that's what it comes down to. This is a beautiful design with a very talented architect. And I've seen other projects of his, and I know that he can find a solution to some of this. So those are mainly my interest and my problems. And to take a 28-inch diameter tree out really doesn't respect the site at all. So, and I forgot to, I know you know who I am, but it's Marsha Lasky at 12 Pelican Point, which I forgot to say. So there you are. Thank you.
Good evening, Ken Johnson. I'm one of the water neighbors. I'm here representing myself and not any organizations that I might belong to. Myself, my wife, but also Lynette Collins and Jeff, who live next door between the Parquets and our house on the lagoon, said about an hour ago they couldn't make it because of a health issue. But they asked me to inform you that they very much support and have reviewed David Parquet's presentation before he made it. So that having been said, we're also part of the 6th group that met with Chip and his wife, lovely couple. And this was a week ago Saturday. Very thankful for that. I see you're here on screen, Chip. I believe you're in Boston. Don't step in the water. Welcome back when you get here. We'd like to keep this within the lagoon's good neighbor policy. I think we've made a good step forward. I'm very grateful for this meeting. I think the issues that have been raised, I'm not going to repeat. There's a couple I'd like to just focus on for a minute or two. But I actually think this is an opportunity to prevent kind of unintended consequences. I don't think that the applicant intends to have some of the negative impacts that we have identified. And I'm hopeful that he and his cooperative architect and everyone else combined are going to find some reasonable solutions. As we all have to live together, and it's a very unique, wonderful place. Every place on the lagoon is a little bit different than the other. We're exceptionally close water neighbors, as everybody has seen. I thank you for the many hours you put into this and probably more, and coming to the site and seeing everything. But just for emphasis, I've gone through most of the issues that have already been spoken to tonight, but quickly, when we talk about square footage to square footage and thousands, 5,000, whatever it is, we're really not talking about same, because this is not the same square footage that's replacing. Very obvious. We're talking about volume, we're talking about height, we're talking about footprint, different displacements. Huge, I think, was just emphasized in a picture. I sent one to City Council yesterday, who also I showed to Chip when we met and his wife a week ago. That photo, I presume, was passed around. That photo was taken of a house that's a little bit more than 3 football fields away. We have some more that show closeness, and we can provide those. But it's more with a discussion, I think, with the applicant, who seemed very responsive to our concerns. And lastly, one statement, Chapter 20 talks about harmonious surroundings. And there's always been historically conflicts between neighbors. It comes up at every application, apparently. But I do think that the chapter specifically states, which has previously been stated, the conditions of what harmonious is. And I think new people looking around, new buyer to this property, can see what's on the left, see what's on the right. And when you have to balance the interests and come up with a reasonable resolution, I think that the buyer is on notice of what needs to be harmonious with their desires to get the best house that they can get. And I don't say that negatively. Thank you for giving me an extra 30 seconds. Bye.
Oh. This is Marcia Lasky again. I also don't know how you could put 3 cork trees in also without moving the ADU back, because that supposedly is going to be in the same place where the cedar is. And so that, I don't know how you could fit that with also not moving the ADU back. That's all. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Hello, my name is Michael Reed, and my family lives at 332 Sanderville Avenue, right next door to the Lycuses. And they beat us by a year, but we've been in that house for about 54 years now. And I just want to echo most of what's been said during this comment period. You know, it is a beautiful design, but it's not a design for that lot and for the neighbors. And I disagree, I guess, with the commission's conclusions, or planning department's the conclusions regarding it meets all 4 of those criteria, because it does impact the privacy, as you heard today. There's a balcony that looks into people's yards. We're 2 lots over, and we can see the story poles clearly in our backyard, clearly in our front yard, overreaching not only the greenery and trees that are there, but the Lycus' house. So it does impact just not the immediate neighbors, but the neighbors throughout the area. It's a big lot, and I'm sure the architects have come up with an accommodation for the owner that would meet his needs and his large pool, but didn't impact and have such a negative impact on the immediate neighbors. I mean, it appears that they took the existing space and just pushed it out to the boundaries, pushed it out to the waterfront, create, you know, basically a beautiful courtyard and a magnificent area for the owner, but neglected the interest of the neighbors. And it has an impact that is just completely negative. So I would hope that you guys would take that into mind when considering this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom, Nancy?
There's no one on Zoom with their hands raised.
Okay. All right, I'll ask the architect if he'd like to respond to some of the comments he heard, or if he has anything to say. In rebuttal.
I think, given the opportunity to speak, we should definitely say something. I just want to thank again all the neighbors for taking their evening, expressing their concerns. I think we've heard a lot. We have a lot to take back. I don't think I need to respond in detail. Yeah, we'll go back, we'll synthesize, we'll see what we could do. And we'll continue, I think, a discussion with the neighbors.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, Chip, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for their feedback. Commissioner Seidel, you want to start tonight?
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. I want to start by saying there's many aspects of the design I appreciate. Ultimately, I hope this will be a beautifully resolved project. I think the architectural character is strong. In my observation, visiting the site, talking to the architect, talking to many of the neighbors, looking at it from many vantage points, I think we're presented with some interesting challenges on the site. I think that the 5 pavilion approach, basically defining kind of the 4 corners of the project with a large open space inside, does actually increase the perception of the size of the house. And I think that the neighbors are perceiving, rightly so, that, you know, it's going to really change the look and the views in the immediate neighborhood. So I guess what I'm saying is, you know, 5,000 square foot house that's existing there is perceived rather differently than this design would be. So as I thought about it, and again, you know, the counter view to that is, you know, I think you're really complying with the code, assuming you get the, you know, the volume corrected the way you've discussed. So it's code compliant, but it's coming off in a very different character than the existing house. So the easiest way I could think of to talk about it was an analogy in another location on the lagoon. I live at the north end of the lagoon. That was really where the first houses were built. I think it was long before our zoning code existed. And it just so happened that all of those early built houses, there were probably 12 or 15 of them, were set back from the water far more than the current zoning would require. And through the years, I've been an owner there since about 1985. Many of the houses have been remodeled, they've been expanded, some of them have been torn down, replaced with other structures. But one thing that in discussions between all the neighbors and with the new projects, we've sort of had a mutual agreement that not one of us was going to push our house forward to the water, because it basically would be almost like a domino falling. It would affect the whole line of houses behind it. So I just offer that as a little bit of a story for you guys to think about. There's, I think, some pressure on the sort of southeast property line with the lineup of the ADU at the back, the JADU, the master bedroom, and then the 25-meter pool. I don't think any of us planning commissioners want to deny this project having the 25-meter pool. I'm sure there's ample room for it. And I also don't want to be the one to suggest how to do it. I just feel like there might be opportunity here for reconsideration of one or two uses that would enable that wing of the house not to pressure itself right up to the 15-foot setback line on the lagoon. And that really seems to be the kind of the focal point of what the neighbors are expressing concern about. So we're not going to have to decide on the project tonight. I guess I just want to encourage you in the best spirit of the community to study the situation, see what you can do to take the viewpoints of the neighbors into consideration. And I think I'll leave my comments at that.
Thank you. Commissioner Burke.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate, actually, I think the design is beautiful, and I appreciate all of the work that's gone into it. And I know that you'll end up with a really lovely home on that site. I also appreciate that the applicant has met with the neighbors. However, I do feel, based on meeting with all of the neighbors myself, with other commissioners, there feels to me that there's just too much of a gap between the feedback the neighbors feel they have given and what they see in the plan. And it's not that they can design the home for the applicant, but I feel like there are a number of their concerns that they've raised that just haven't been really reflected in the plan in a meaningful way. And I think that we heard that here tonight. And so rather than go back and recap all of those, I would just encourage you to take the feedback from the neighbors to heart tonight, and really look for some sort of middle ground or a place where you can arrive at a home that is still your dream home, but yet is something that enters the neighborhood in a much more balanced way, where people feel like it's a bit more harmonious with what currently exists. I'd say that's one. And then just to give you a little bit more of a push, is I currently take the position that it doesn't meet the exemption that is outlined in 090B, because it does in fact impact the privacy or the primary views of adjacent properties. And so that creates a whole nother issue. And so I think there's just, I underscore that only to give you the proper incentive to really come to the table with something that can address the issues that have been raised by the neighbors and create something that everybody feels good about. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair in waiting, Johnson.
So I think what Kevin and Alex have said already is spot on, and I agree with a lot of it. I'll start with the sugar. I think that there's so much about this that's really well done. It's very elegant. Belvedere is a very eclectic mix of styles, and it's very modern, but it doesn't feel out of place to me. I think you've done a great job breaking up different visual planes with different materials. It just has a very solid, earthy feeling, but it's contrasted really nicely with these open spaces in the roof and airiness and light with the glass. So I also think the inner courtyard is a really just beautiful and elegant touch, and I think this lot does have the space for it. The downside of organizing the home around such a large inner courtyard is that you've pushed all of the bulk and mass to the corners of the property. And so I agree with Alex, this really does reinforce the size of this really large home. So it reads as very just massive and imposing from the street and from the neighboring homes. And given the size and scale of the home, I would really like to see more generous setbacks and just breathing room around the perimeter of the property. I think that would go a long way. And I think you also will give yourself more space for planting just greenery by way of trees. That's going to help a lot as well. This was discussed quite a bit, but I think you have too much glass on the lagoon side. I would aim for like a 30% reduction, just to put a pin on the map for you. Because when you, as you saw from the photos, you're not just getting the light from the window, you're getting the reflection off the water. So whatever you're putting out, you're getting double. So just be really mindful of that when you're reconfiguring the windows. I think the window on the kitchen side can be cut in half at least. I think the glass hallway is a really beautiful design feature. I wonder if this can't be shortened a little bit. We talked about the lighting in there. I think this is also a place where additional greenery and landscaping front and back would be just not just helpful for light pollution, but really beautiful there. So we talked about the trees a bit as well, but I think it would be a real tragedy to lose that majestic old cedar tree. I think it should absolutely be saved. It's such a feature of the property and it adds so much to the neighborhood there. We do everything we can to protect our trees here, and no amount of new landscaping can replace something that's been in the earth for 75 plus years. So I would really like to see that stay. Again, I think you have so much room that you can pull things back and keep it. I feel the same way about those magnolias in the back. And again, you saw from the photos just how much that shields and blocks for the neighbors across the way. So I would really like to see those magnolias stay as well. Another place where I think you need a lot more trees, or where I would think about it, is just around the pool. You've got this great pool and it feels very barren to me. I would want to sit by a pool and have some trees for shade. I think it would add a lot, and it would also help with some of the noise reduction for neighbors who are just on the other side of the pool. So I think, I think the design needs to be scaled back in size. I think obviously you have to meet your volume requirements, but I think that I'm in agreement that it does feel excessively large the way it's been laid out. And I don't think it's in character with the neighborhood. I think it really does draw attention to itself. I would like to see a design that's more nuanced and respectful of the neighborhood and what's already there. And I think that you are really skilled and talented, and I think that you can absolutely take all of this feedback and come back with something great that's not going to sacrifice much. And you're still going to have a home that has the same sort of intent and ethos without giving too much away. And I think you have, like I said, I think you have a lot of space to work with, and so you can do it. Those would be my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Watson?
Hi, thanks very much. I would like to say also that I absolutely adore your design, and I wish I could afford to hire you as an architect when I want to build a house. I don't think that's going to happen, but I can dare to dream. And I understand, I've seen your houses on West Shore, and I actually drove by one of the houses that you're working on in Stinson. And I think they're magnificent. One of the things that makes the lagoon so special is that there are the lagoon side neighbors, which you don't have either on West Shore, because apparently we don't care about the people in Sausalito, or in Simpson Beach, where where the neighbors are very far away. And the house is going to be surrounded by other residents, other members of the community. And I echo my other committee members in saying that I do believe that the siting of the house in the pavilions at the edges of the lot have made it, especially with respect to the Lycus neighbors and also the plumbers who look down from the top, it does really impact their experience of, of living in their houses. I apologize, Ms. Larson, I didn't go into your yard, so I couldn't see. But, I think, I echo my committee members that I think that minor changes and whether it can be done within your volumes, within your volume study or with additional modifications, should be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you, and I'll be brief because I know it's late. I rather like the design and applaud it. I like the way that you have it's divided up evenly in thirds, 3 stripes with the clear in the middle. It works fine in and of itself. But as Commissioner Williams noted, that's I live on West Shore, and bring it on over there. But in this little pocket here, obviously, you've got a lot of homes that are older and haven't met their time for a total makeover yet. The atmosphere in the lagoon back there is almost riparian in kind of its, it's a little more delicate, I would say, than what we have to work with over on West Shore. And I was, not to get boring, but I knew the mayors pretty well who lived in that property for decades. Both very understated people. They lived quietly. Some of the most dignified people I ever knew. That said, their house didn't work very well. It was big. You kept going around it kind of counterclockwise inside, trying to figure out where you're supposed to be in that house. So I do understand the impulse that it needs a redo. But that said, I guess the only place I'd really call balls and strikes is how it sits with the next door neighbors, truly. It is imposing, and whoever described imposing being, if anything, a feel issue and nothing you can quantify with a metric. But being in the Lycus's backyard, it feels imposing. And I don't know quite what the solution for that is to expand the setbacks, shrink the size, lower the size. I don't necessarily feel there's anything wrong with the second floor. Obviously, more than half the houses around the lagoon have a second floor. A lot of them are the same kind of setback variety. And I also appreciate that had the applicant wanted to, he might have proposed a much bigger second floor. So I appreciate all those things, but it is large. I don't know if privacy is quite what the concern would be, but it feels a little weird from the Lycus's property, to borrow a word that's out there in our culture now. Thanks.
Thank you. Very nice comments. Justin?
Being so new to Belvedere and so new to this council, I definitely do not deserve holding down the trailing comments from the commission. Thank you for presenting your work. It's a beautiful project. I echo everything everyone has said. And the only thing I would add is to consider roofline a little bit as far as ways to mitigate some of these considerations. And I would also do a pass at the materials and see if there's anything that comes up as far as opportunities for shifts.
Thank you. So I visited the site. I visited all the neighbors. I actually was with Justin on our site visits, and we walked into the house, Mr. Plummer's house up on Bayview, and we rang the doorbell of the neighbor next door. She was home and let us come take a look from her deck. And so we rang the doorbell of Miss Larson's home, but nobody responded. So we just kind of peeked through the gate to see the story poles. The design is beautiful, as are most of your designs. And I think that the lagoon poses unusual situations that, that you've heard from the neighbors. And I think that you can modify this project to hopefully come to a compromise with the neighbors. And it's always a shock to neighbors when there's a new lagoon home that goes in, because people don't understand you have to go up. And they are shocked and impacted by the change. So I think some of the comments you're getting are just about change, but I think that you could do some of the suggestions my fellow commissioners stated and modify this project, and it would get passed. I also want to bring up the lighting. Thank you for getting rid of all the lights down by the water and the recessed lighting. And I just want to say on the pool, okay, you have the lights on the side, so it shines out towards the neighbor. You should have the lights on the pool side that it shines back into your house, so you don't really cause any new light pollution. We talked over the weekend about doing some kind of maybe privacy screening or something up on that upper second floor deck, maybe pulling that back a little bit further away from the property line, just to give like his home a little bit more privacy feel there. And that might also be something on the back side that would also make them feel they have some privacy. You did that on West Shore. And trees. Okay, so when I visited the Parquet home, I was greatly impacted by how much those 3 magnolia trees do for screening. And I don't know if the strawberry trees will do the same thing. So, and I know the primary bedroom gets close to at least one of the magnolias, maybe at least 2 of them could stay. And or if you feel there's a tree that is better, that you not take those magnolias down until after the construction, so they do get some blockage from the construction. And I don't know about the cork trees. I mean, they're beautiful, but they grow to, I looked online and they said up to 70 feet. So, but you said they grow 30 to 40 feet? So my concern above and beyond what Ms. Slasky said is that height is going to impact the people up on Bayview even more from a view, because it's going to be taller than the house, and that's going to be all greenery. So they're not, I mean, if it's a windowed kind of tree, they could see through it, but it sounds like it's a dense, I'm not a landscape person, a dense head. So I don't know if you should revisit that cork tree and come up with something maybe that doesn't grow quite so tall, because if we approve that, we're creating a new situation that I don't even think the people on Bayview have thought about. So I would just look at the cork and see if there's a different species. I think I'd also like to see more trees in the landscaped area in the back as you go down to the dock, where you have like shrubs and things like that. I mean, it's amazing what like a strawberry tree there might work, where it will block out some of that light in that corner of the great room. And at least, you know, shield it from the view, and it also filter the light that bumps out onto the lagoon also. So I'd like you to take a look at that. I mean, landscaping does a lot for shielding, and I know everybody wants the view of the lagoon, But I think what we're trying to address is the concerns we've heard from the Leeward people. So I'd like that, and I think the house I felt that had the greatest impact from the glass, and I've been told to use the word glass because no one knows what we talk about glazing. So from the glass was from the Johnson's home. And because the trees block it from the Parquet house somewhat, not always, but somewhat. But from the Johnson home, it was a straight on view of that whole corner and down. So by putting trees where you have some greenery, I think it would help shield some of that light for that house. So I think if you maybe visit those homes again and look at it from their perspective and come up with a plan, I'm not talking about blocking the view or putting a hedge or anything else. And if they're in their great room and they're sitting down, they're going to be able to see around the trunk and see the water. But it will actually block the light further up. So I'd like you to take that into consideration. Okay. So
Can I have one more comment about landscaping?
oh, she wants one more comment about landscaping.
Okay, sorry, I just thought of it as you were speaking about the front. The wood wall is beautiful, but it's really big. And I think that if you thought about planting something green as you're walking into that gate, something low on either side, it would make such a difference and it would look great and not take anything away from that wall.
And the only thing I'll say about the landscaping is whatever you put in the front, make sure it's not some kind of plant that's going to grow out onto the sidewalk, because then you're going to have issues with the revocable license with city council. And actually, we're going to start saying it now too.
Question you just reminded me.
Okay,
Is what about sidewalks? So,
they have to do a sidewalk.
okay, that's not in the plan, or it's not indicated on the plan, or it is?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Last minute. Okay. All right. So can I have a continuation? Or I guess I have to ask the applicant. Well, no, we're just doing this as a study. So we're going to, can I have a motion for continuation to a future meeting?
I move to continue the item at 322 San Rafael Avenue to a future meeting.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item for West Shore Road. And you're recused. Yeah. We'll let everybody leave. Well, they have it on the new landscape. They didn't have it on. Okay, would everyone please step outside of the chambers if you want to talk, because we have another agenda item here. Thank you. And if you're going to talk in the vestibule, please close the door. This is what our meetings normally look like. Can we please have the staff report?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Carapia and members of the Planning Commission. For your consideration this evening is an application for design review, demolition, and revocable license for a residential addition and remodel at 4 West Shore Road. The site consists of a 2,700 square foot single-story residence and detached two-car garage on a relatively flat 9,900 square foot lot in the R15 zoning district on West Shore Road. The residence was constructed in 1962 and its detached garage and covered entry pergola sit within the front yard setbacks and are considered legal non-conforming structures. The project proposes to demolish 89% of the home's exterior roofs and walls and add 230 square feet of total floor area. The project would demolish the covered entry and construct a new 103 square foot covered entry seen here in orange. The entry would be stepped back 15 feet from the front property line to conform with front yard setback requirements. Additionally, the project proposes a 27 square foot addition at the front of the residence and a 376 square foot addition at the rear. The project would also remodel the detached two-car garage, add new hardscape landscaping and exterior lighting. The project proposes to remove 5 existing skylights and install 4 skylights and a new standing C-metal roof at the residence and the garage. The roof line of the residence will be raised 1 foot to a maximum height of 18 feet and 3 inches above existing grade. At the left elevation, the project proposes to install 4 windows. The addition at the rear would be 14 feet and 10 inches from existing grade, and the addition at the entry would be 15 feet and 8 inches tall. At the rear elevation, the project proposes new windows and glass doors and 2 skylights. And at the right elevation, the project proposes 2 new windows with a sliding glass door at the rear yard addition. At the front elevation, the project proposes new windows and doors, as well as 2 skylights. The project proposes to install a new garage door, vertical wood siding, and a C-metal roof to match the residence. The existing 13-foot, 4-inch tall roof height of the garage would not be increased. The project proposes to construct 2 pergolas, both approximately 10 feet from the right side property line. The rear yard pergola is proposed to be 9 feet, 7 inches tall from the existing grade, and the side yard pergola is proposed to be 8 feet tall from existing grade. Both pergolas would include horizontal wood slats for privacy along the right side yard. The project also proposes flagstone and gravel pavers throughout the exterior walkways and patios, new wood decking at the front and rear entrances, and a new 6 foot tall black metal entry gate and cedar wood fence at the front yard. Colors and materials will include a dark bronze standing C-metal roof and Alaskan yellow cedar siding, and black powder coated aluminum windows and doors and cedar wood at the trellises. The project proposes 14 wall-mounted downlights along the exterior building walls, as well as 15 downward-facing path lights along the side yards, 17 step lights along the decks and pergolas, and 5 downlights within the pergola beams. The project proposes to remove 11 trees and shrubs, primarily within the front and southern side yards. These would include removing junipers by the garage and a Japanese maple, plum, cherry, photinia, and birch tree from the front yard. At the rear, the project proposes removing a Japanese maple and 2 Victorian box pittosporum. Proposed landscaping includes a variety of trees, shrubs, and perennials. At the front of the property, the project would plant 2 dwarf Meyer lemon trees, 1 dwarf mandarin, and an assortment of lavender, mint, grasses, and white fuchsia perennials. On the southern side yard, the project would plant a row of silver sheen pittosporum in 15-gallon pots and 2 star magnolia trees. At the rear yard, the project proposes sea lavender, western fern, iris, rosemary, and 3 dogwood trees listed to a mature height of 20 feet. Within the last day, it is staff's understanding that the architect is working on changes to some of the plant species as requested by the adjacent neighbor at 6 West Shore Road. The applicant may wish to speak on these changes later this evening. The project requests a revocable license for private improvements within the West Shore Road right-of-way. These improvements include existing landscaping, driveway, and walkway. Staff has received 1 letter in support of the project from the adjacent neighbor at 6 West Shore Road. The project is exempt from CEQA. and staff finds the addition and remodel to comply with the zoning ordinances and recommends planning commission adopt the resolutions granting design review. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Any questions from the commission? I had one. Just point of clarification. On the revocable license, it looks like the gate is in its original position versus the 15-foot setback. I mean, it's not, it should be where it should be. But is the dark part the sidewalk? Is that what they're showing as the sidewalk? Is the sidewalk on here? The 4-foot sidewalk, is that the dark part? There's no key to say what the dark is. And just as a,
The sidewalk is to the left of the dark area. The shaded is the driveway and the entry walkway. And for the gate, there was a last minute,
yeah.
so but this
That
will
can
be
get
updated.
corrected.
That'll be
Yeah.
corrected.
So what, the dark part is for the driveway and the what?
Driveway, landscaping, and then the entry walkway. The actual sidewalk is to the left of the shaded part area.
Okay, so they're not showing the sidewalk.
Well, it's not, it's there, it's not identified, so we can
Okay.
note it.
I just looked at it and I couldn't tell what, if this was just the plantings or this included the sidewalk or what.
We can have the sidewalk noted on the
Yeah,
revocable license.
before it goes to city council.
Mm.
And then one other question. You said there were 5, I had trouble with the lighting schedule. 5 lights in the pergola. Is that the pergola in the back?
They're between both pergolas. I'm gonna,
Oh, between both pergolas. Okay,
one.
thank you. That's the only questions I have.
The applicant is on Zoom as well as here. So
Yeah. Hi.
Sean, hi.
Excuse me. Hi, I met a good portion of you over the last couple of days. I'm Michael Erskine, the landscape architect. I have John Clark, the architect, who's on Zoom tonight, which he will be speaking to the architectural component of the project. And I'd also like to introduce Tammy Jew, the owner of the project, who's here to my left. So thank you for taking the time. Sammy, Rebecca, thank you for your help on this thus far. I'm opening up tonight just to discuss the site, the landscape, and our design approach. The landscape design which once we get through that, we'll hand it off to John, as I mentioned, to discuss architecture and those portions of the project. The original guiding principles that we worked from, that Tammy was insistent upon, and I think is evident in the plans, are a few items. So one is to minimize impact to the site and to the neighbors, which I believe has been achieved and is much smaller than what the upper limits of the zoning might allow in this project. It's a very modest project. Reuse of materials and recycling. As much of the materials that we can harvest from the site, including stone, gravel, and the like, will be repurposed, as well as some of the plantings that are shown on the planting plan. An environmentally conscious material and plant selection, which we've tried to accomplish that with some of the habitat building plants. And lastly, water and energy efficient systems, which include a water catchment system for reuse in the landscape. We've worked to provide a thoughtful site and planting plan that's harmonious with the neighboring properties, the street frontage, and the neighborhood. Of note, we've communicated and coordinated with neighboring property owners to address questions and concerns. In particular, screening and tree placement to provide benefit not only for Tammy, but for the neighbors on each side. The screening shrubs are there to enhance the screening of views between 4 West Shore and the adjacent neighbors. This is also in unison with the planting on the other side of the fence, so we're not creating any kind of compromise with plantings that are occurring on the opposite side of the fence. The landscape is characterized by low water use plantings that are non-invasive and tailored to a size that is appropriate for the site. So trees that are not going to outgrow the site. It's a rather small site. There's not a lot of landscape areas. Landscape lighting, which you just mentioned a moment ago, around the site is mainly for access. So path lights that basically are around the perimeter. A lot of the lights that are close to the house is because they're 3 steps down from the finished floor down to grade. So those are in the risers of the stairs, and a few down lights in the trellises that were just mentioned. The intention is to create privacy at the courtyard settings, both in the front and the back, which are embraced by the existing architecture, and in the backyard by the primary suite expansion, which John will talk about momentarily. So with that, I think this is a good way to segue to John, who will speak about the architecture. If you have questions about the landscape, I'm happy to answer those once he's complete with his portion.
Thank you.
Hi there. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for your consideration. I'm John Clark, the architect. Thanks for your consideration for design review application in front of you tonight. Also want to thank you for your accommodation for my untimely COVID case. From your site visits, you can see that the proposed project is modest, as Michael was talking about, including thoughtful additions to the house, a new covered entry element, modified garage roof, and landscape improvements throughout the site. Michael touched on this, but integral to the design of the project has been the design directive we got from Tammy to use the modifications to the house to create places to engage with the exterior. Currently, the house is a simple box that has narrow elevated decks on the front and back, and it creates a real sense of detachment from the surrounding landscape. Through the placement of 2 additions, one at the back and one at the entry, the extension of outdoor decks on the front and back of the house, a new covered entry element. These structures shape several outdoor spaces with a variety of programmatic uses that will allow Tammy to utilize her entire property more completely. All these outdoor spaces have been designed to engage the outdoors while preserving her privacy and also the privacy of her neighbors. The proposed site design is simple. The proposed forms are visually pleasing. The material palette is muted yet sophisticated, and the plantings are harmonious with the surroundings. As presented in the staff report, this project is compliant with all the applicable city design standards. It satisfies floor area ratio, lot coverage, setbacks, height requirements. As Michael discussed, we've met with all the adjacent neighbors, hosted an event, addressed any concerns that they may have had, and have received support from all of them, including the supportive email that Michael referenced from 6 West Shore, which is in the staff report. So we hope that you can follow the staff report's recommendation for approval of the project as proposed. Michael and I are here to answer any questions you may have about the proposed project. I will clarify that the revocable license, the shaded portion, is highlighting the section between the front property line and the backside of the sidewalk. It's all the area where planting, irrigation, driveway extension, and entry paving will cross into public right of way. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. So let me just ask you one quick question. The sidewalk in the city engineer report said the sidewalk wasn't 48 inches and it needed to go to, I don't know what it is now, it needs to go to 48 inches. So does that reflect, what I'm trying to say, does that reflect in the revocable license?
I don't believe that is reflected in it, but it can certainly be incorporated into the work that's being proposed there. We're proposing to replace the driveway, which would intersect that sidewalk, because the driveway extension and the sidewalk do overlap, and the replacement of the sidewalk to being 48 inches wide can be included in the revocable license. I don't believe it is right now.
Okay, all right. It can be modified. We can condition it and they can modify it for city council.
Perfect. Great.
Oh, I'm talking to Sammy.
Oh.
It's all okay. Any questions for the architect or landscape architect? Jenna?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my one question is, when we went to the site, you mentioned that there were a couple of trees that were in pretty bad shape. I mean, we saw them, to the untrained eye, they looked in pretty bad shape. So, and you're proposing to replace those trees with other trees in largely the same locations, both for privacy, screening, et cetera?
Yes, so namely in the backyard, there's a handful of large shrubs. The ones that remain mainly on the northern property line, they will be replaced with lichen-kind size shrubs and trees along that side. So we've met with that neighbor, and that was copacetic with them as well. So yes. We do have an arborist report that was part of this whole exercise.
Thank
That
you.
when Tammy bought the house, there were several shrubs that were not, you guys didn't see, that were extremely unsafe and had actually taken out the fence. So that report's part of this deck, but that was part of the thinking too, of like, where do we go with some of these that we know are on the way out? So yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We saved the best for last. Anyone in chambers wish to speak? Seeing no one, is there anyone on Zoom?
There's no one on Zoom
Okay.
with their
so-
hands raised. There are people on Zoom.
So I'll close the public meeting and take feedback from commissioners. Kevin?
Sure, thank you. I think it's a really thoughtful, lovely plan. I appreciate that you've spent time with your neighbors trying to understand what their needs and concerns are, and you've addressed those as best you can within the context of the plan. But I think it's going to be an amazing home, and I really look forward to you completing the project. So yeah, you would have my full support. I can make the findings, I should say.
Thank you. Commissioner Seidel?
Thanks. Yes, I'll be able to make the findings too. It seems like a really nicely done improvement on an older house. So I'll be there for it.
Justin?
I too can make the findings. It's a beautifully cited project and seems to respect both the architecture and the neighborhood.
Thank you. Jenna?
I also can make the findings. I think this is lovely, modest, in keeping with the community, and is truly going to be a great improvement.
Thank you. Don? No comment? He's not recused, right?
No, but he
Okay.
doesn't have to make a comment either.
Yeah, okay. All right, so thank you. I visited the site, met with the landscape architect who I had most of my comments to. And again, a lovely update. It's going to be greatly improving the site and the home. And everything has been done very tastefully. The architect did a very nice job. And the only thing that I want to add is that it was touched briefly, but we usually require a one-on-one tree removal, and you took out 11 and you're putting in 8. So you got to find somewhere for 3 more trees. Yeah. Okay. So, and well, I don't need to talk about that now. So I too can make all the findings for design review, the demo permit, and the revocable license with the conditions on the revocable license before it goes to city council that we talked about. So with that, may I please have a motion number 1, a motion for motion number 1?
I move to adopt the resolution granting design review to construct a residential addition and remodel of 4 West Shore Road with the conditions cited.
Second.
A motion 2?
Oh, you want me to do all the motions at once?
Yeah,
Okay.
do them all.
I move motion 2 to adopt the resolution granting demolition permit to demolish over 50% of the existing residents at 4 West Shore Road.
Second.
And motion 3, recommend.
Oh, no, we got to vote.
Okay.
Motion 2, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You
We
didn't,
didn't
you can
vote on
vote on
one?
1 and 2 together. if you'd like.
Okay, so we're voting on 1 and 2. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Okay, 3.
And motion 3, recommend to the city council approval of a revocable license for improvements located in the public street right-of-way at 4 West Shore Road.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, congratulations. Thank you for your patience through the first project. And I close the August Planning Commission meeting.